Am I the asshole for exposing my parents' dark secret at a family reunion? You know how every family has its secrets? Some people joke about it, oh, Grandma won't tell us what she did during the 60s, or Uncle Joe disappears for hours every Christmas. That kind of harmless mystery. But what if you grew up feeling like your entire life was a secret? Let me back up. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and from the outside, I had what you'd probably call an ideal suburban childhood. Think manicured lawns, Saturday morning soccer games, PTA moms, and the constant hum of lawnmowers in the summer. My dad's a lawyer, sharp suits, briefcase, always had an answer for everything. My mom? A second-grade teacher, sweet but reserved. I have one older brother, Ethan. He's 32 now, married with a kid of his own. If you looked at us from across the street, you'd think, damn, those people have it together. And honestly, that's how we were taught to be seen. Appearances mattered. Every Christmas photo had to be perfect. Every interaction with neighbors needed to come with a smile. My mom ironed our school clothes even when we were in high school. And it wasn't just pride, it felt performative. I didn't realize it then, but I grew up in a house full of masks. Even as a kid, I sensed something strange. It wasn't anything loud or dramatic. It was the absence of certain things. Like, I never once saw my parents kiss. Not even a quick peck on the cheek. No holding hands. No affectionate teasing. They didn't fight either, not in front of us, at least. It was just neutral. Like two roommates playing house. They never talked about their lives before us. I'd ask innocent questions, where did you and Dad meet, or did you have any pets when you were little? And they'd brush it off with vague answers. Or change the subject. I remember one time I was about 8 and had to do a family tree project for school. Simple stuff, where your grandparents are from, what jobs they had, who your cousins are. That kind of thing. My parents freaked out. My mom told me to just make something up if I couldn't remember. I told her, but I don't know anything. She got flustered, said she'd help me with it later. She never did. When I pressed again, my dad said, that stuff isn't important. Focus on the future, not the past. I got a C on the project. But even worse? When I told my teacher my parents didn't help me, she looked at me with this sad little expression and said, I'm sorry, sweetie. That memory stuck with me. As I got older, the emotional distance between us became more obvious. Ethan moved out at 18, joined the Navy, and never looked back. He barely called. When he did visit, he and Dad would get into these quiet arguments, nothing explosive, just sharp tones and lots of passive-aggressive jabs. He wouldn't stay more than a weekend. He didn't even come home for Thanksgiving one year. My mom cried in the kitchen, but she didn't say anything. She never did. I stayed longer. Went to a local college. Tried to play the good daughter role. But the older I got, the more I realized we never talked about anything real. No advice about dating, no deep talks about dreams or fears. Just how are your classes, and don't forget to check your tire pressure. And every time I brought up extended family, asking about my mom's sister I'd only seen in photos, or why we never visited my dad's side of the family, they'd shut it down. No time, they'd say. Or, we don't talk to them anymore. No explanation. No stories. Nothing. About 2 months ago, I got a group email from someone named Karen Whitfield. I didn't recognize the name, but the subject line read, Whitfield Farrell Family Reunion, it's finally happening. I opened it, a little confused, and saw that it was a mass invite to a family reunion on my mom's side. Apparently, they'd been trying to organize one for over a decade, and I forwarded it to my parents with a simple, did you see this? An hour later, my mom called me. She sounded panicked. Don't go, she said. No hello, no small talk. Just that. Wait, what? Why? It's complicated. Just trust us, honey. It's not a good idea. My dad got on the line too. For the first time in my life, he sounded emotional. Angry, even. "There's nothing for you there," he said. "Please. Just let this one go." The call ended awkwardly. They didn't yell, they didn't threaten, but the energy was charged. Like they were scared. Truly scared. And that made me want to go even more. I debated it for a few days. I even talked to Ethan, which I rarely do. When I told him about the reunion and how weirdly Mom and Dad reacted, he got quiet. Then he said, "If you're going, prepare yourself." I asked him what that meant. He said, "Some things once known can't be unknown. Don't expect anything to be the same after." It felt like something out of a movie. Like I was being warned away from uncovering buried treasure that was cursed. But how do you not go after something like that? I told them I was going. My mom cried. My dad didn't speak to me for 3 days. I started having dreams, fuzzy, chaotic dreams about people I didn't know and voices I didn't recognize. I chalked it up to nerves. I packed my things and drove out to the reunion the following Saturday. It was held about 4 hours from where I live, in this massive property near a lake. Rolling hills. Cabins. Bonfires. The works. It was beautiful. And terrifying. Because the moment I arrived, everything changed. I pulled up and immediately felt out of place. Not because people were unfriendly, on the contrary, I was met with warm smiles and hugs and laughter. But because they all knew each other. They had memories, inside jokes, family resemblance. There were dozens of people with my mother's eyes. Or my dad's jawline. It was like walking into a parallel version of my life, one where I had grown up surrounded by a huge, loving family I'd never met. A woman in her 60s approached me and said, "You must be Renee's daughter." "That's my mom's name." I nodded, a little stunned. She hugged me like she'd known me forever. "I'm your Aunt Margaret," she said, beaming. "Oh, honey, you look just like your grandma." I blinked. "Grandma June?" She paused. "No. Your other grandma. Clara." I had never heard that name in my life. That night, there was a big welcome dinner. Tables lined up under string lights, food spread out buffet style, music playing from a Bluetooth speaker. I sat with people I barely knew. And yet, they knew me. They told me stories, how they remembered me as a baby, how my mom used to be the life of the party, how my dad was quiet but always kind. They shared photos, grainy old prints of my parents in their 20s, smiling, holding drinks, dancing. One photo showed my mom, pregnant. With me, presumably. But standing beside her wasn't my dad. It was a man I didn't recognize. Arm around her waist. Smiling wide. I asked who he was. People at the table got quiet. Then someone muttered, "That's Robert." "Robert who?" They exchanged glances. One woman said, "You really don't know?" I shook my head, heart pounding. She leaned in and whispered, "That's your real father." I wish I could tell you that the rest of the family reunion was full of laughter and warm memories. But after that night, I couldn't focus on anything except one burning question. Who the hell is Emily? Because I'm not her. My name is Rachel. That's the name on my birth certificate, on every school. It was the second day of the reunion. Mid-afternoon. People were lounging around on picnic blankets or playing lawn games. I wandered off from the main group, a bit overstimulated, and found myself seated next to a frail older woman who introduced herself as Aunt Florence. She had snowy white hair pulled into a braid, thin silver-rimmed glasses, and this soft voice that made you lean in to hear her better. We were talking about nothing important, weather, the view, how she liked the potato salad, when she suddenly turned to me, smiled so sweetly, and said, "Emily, you look just like your mother at your age." I paused. Blinked. I figured she meant my mom, Renee. Maybe she just mixed up the name. So I smiled politely and said, "I think you mean Rachel." "I'm Rachel." And her expression didn't shift into embarrassment. She didn't laugh it off or correct herself. She blinked. Once. Twice. Then she looked down at her lap and said, with this strange distance in her voice, "Oh, right. I forgot they changed it after the thing." "The what?" I gently asked. "After what thing?" But her whole energy shifted. Her shoulders stiffened. Her hands, spotted, trembling, started to shake. She gripped her skirt like she was bracing herself against a wave. Her lips parted like she might say more, but then her husband, a man I hadn't even noticed until then, appeared behind her and placed a hand on her shoulder. He was calm, but intentional. "It's time for her medication," he said. "She needs to rest." He looked at me, directly in my eyes, as he guided her up and away. And the expression on his face wasn't one of kindness or apology. It was warning. I didn't speak to anyone else that day. I didn't go to the bonfire that night or the farewell brunch the next morning. I left early. I got in my car, and I drove the 4 hours home in a fog. My hands gripping the steering wheel so tight they were stiff by the time I pulled into my apartment complex. My brain was screaming the entire drive. Emily. Changed after the thing. They changed it. Who is they? What was the thing? That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed. Turned. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Florence's expression, soft, then confused, then afraid. Like she'd accidentally let something out that had been locked up for years. And then the question came back louder than ever. What else have they been hiding from me? At 3:12 a.m., I got out of bed, grabbed my laptop, and sat on the living room floor. I pulled up my own birth records first. There was nothing suspicious at face value. My name, Rachel Marie Thompson, born to Renee and David Thompson, in the same city I grew up in. All the standard information. But something about it felt too clean. Too surface level. Then I tried looking for Emily Thompson in public databases. I didn't really expect anything, but there it was. One hit. And Emily Renee Whitfield, born just 2 years before me. Same birth hospital. Mother listed as Renee Whitfield. Whitfield is my mom's maiden name. No father listed. I sat frozen, staring at that screen. I checked the birth date again. Emily would have been born 2 years before me. But there's no death certificate. No adoption record. No follow-up. It was like she was erased. Then I started thinking in loops. Am I adopted? Am I her? Was there another child before me? Did she die? Why did Florence think I was her? And then I did something I probably should have done a long time ago. I called Ethan. It was past 4 a.m., but he answered on the second ring. He sounded groggy, but not annoyed. "Been waiting for this," he said. For a second, I didn't speak. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding. Finally, I asked, "Who is Emily?" There was a pause. Long enough for me to think he might hang up. Then he said, "So Florence told you." She called me that like it was normal. And then she said they changed it. After something. Another long pause. Then Ethan said, "I think it's time we talk." But not over the phone. We met at our childhood home 2 days later. Our parents were conveniently away for the weekend on a church retreat. It was the first time I'd been back in over a year. The house felt smaller. Dimmer. Ethan didn't waste time. He led me straight up to the attic. "Now, here's the thing," Our attic had always been off limits. Not in a "there's asbestos up there" kind of way. More like, "don't ask questions, there's nothing up there for you" kind of way. Our parents kept it locked. Always. But Ethan had a key. "Found it in Dad's desk drawer when I was 17, he said. "Didn't go up until I was 18. "Been waiting for the right time to tell you what I found." We opened the hatch and climbed the rickety steps. It smelled like dust and would rot. Boxes. Dozens of them. All neatly labeled, "Taxes 1994. Christmas ornaments. Books, donate." All lies. Ethan moved quickly, pulling one specific box from behind a stack of plastic bins. It was unlabeled. Old. Taped shut. He opened it. Inside were documents. Photos. Journals. Newspaper clippings. And a small, pink hospital bracelet. The name printed on the band? Whitfield, Emily R. D.O.B., February 14, 1995. My birthday is listed as February 14, 1997. Exactly 2 years later. I picked up a photo. A baby. Big brown eyes. A little swirl of dark hair. I recognized the smile. Because it was mine. So here's what Ethan told me. Emily was real. She was born 2 years before me. To Renee Whitfield. No father on the record. But according to the journals, kept by my mother, I should mention, Emily was not a well baby. She had seizures. Developmental delays. Endless hospital visits. There were therapy records. Medical bills. Even a typed letter from a specialist that said, "Prognosis uncertain. Recommending further evaluation for genetic conditions." And then, nothing. No death certificate. No adoption paperwork. Just a gap. And then a fresh birth certificate 2 years later. Mine. Ethan looked at me and said the words I will never forget. They didn't have another kid, Rachel. They didn't adopt. They renamed you. You ever have that feeling that your entire life, every memory, every identity marker, every moment you thought was real, is suddenly unstable? Like the foundation cracked, and now every step feels like it might fall out from under you? That was me, last week. After my brother Ethan and I opened that box in the attic, after I held that hospital bracelet with the name Emily R. Whitfield and saw that photo of a baby who looked eerily like me, I knew I couldn't stop digging. Because if they'd hidden that much from me, what else had they buried? I needed the truth. Even if it ruined everything. I didn't sleep much after that day. Ethan and I agreed to keep quiet about what we'd found, at least until I could confirm more. I needed documentation. Evidence. Not just memories or speculation. I wanted proof. So over the next week, I became obsessed. I went back to my apartment and started combing through every box I'd brought from home over the years. Old school records. Medical papers. Photos. Birthday cards. I paid for multiple online background checks, on myself, on my parents, even on my mom's maiden name. But the most significant discovery came from a place I hadn't even thought about in years, my dad's old cloud drive. See, back in college, when I got my first laptop, my dad helped me set up backup storage. He gave me access to his own cloud account so I could copy files over. I hadn't touched it in nearly a decade. But I still remembered the password. Same one he used for everything, Socrates 1980. And just like that, I was in. At first, it was boring. Tax records, old case files, scanned receipts. Then, buried under a folder labeled archive_misc_private, I found a subfolder titled EMRW_DOCS. And I swear, when I opened it, my heart stopped. There were over 30 documents inside. Some scanned. Some digital originals. The file names were vague: order_99.pdf, intake1.jpg, redact_notice.docs. I clicked the first one. It was a scanned birth certificate from a different state. Name, Emily Rose, last name redacted. Mother, unknown. Father, unknown. Date of birth, February 14, 1995. Place of birth, redacted, small town in a different state. I stared at it for a full minute, my hands frozen on the trackpad. It wasn't just the wrong name. It wasn't just the wrong place. It was a different life. And one I had no memory of. The next file was a scanned court document. It was stamped, Confidential, Child Protection Services. Date, November 1999. Case reference, State vs. Redacted cult name. Title, Protective Custody and Emergency Identity Change, minor Emily Rose, redacted. Details included: removal of child from a dangerous ideological compound. Emergency foster placement pending long-term guardianship. Legal name change to be initiated within 6 months. Child to be placed in closed identity protocol to avoid media exposure and protect from potential group retaliation or influence. In plainer terms, I had been rescued from a cult. Then I found it. A grainy newspaper scan. Dated October 31, 1999. Headline: Local cult raided by federal agents, leader arrested, multiple children taken into protective custody. The article was short but chilling. It described a compound in a rural area where children were allegedly raised under strict isolation, exposed to indoctrination practices, and denied outside education or medical care. The leader, a man named Jonathan, redacted, had been arrested for charges ranging from child endangerment to unlawful imprisonment. 3 children were taken. 2 were returned to distant relatives. 1 remained in state custody. That one was me. I put all the pieces together over the course of hours. Here's the truth, as best I can now understand it. I was born into a cult. Raised under someone else's rules. My biological parents are a mystery, possibly members, possibly victims, possibly worse. In 1999, the cult was raided. I was 4 years old. Somehow, through connections I still don't fully understand, I ended up in the custody of David and Renee Thompson. My parents. But they weren't just good Samaritans. They took me in under a government protection program. With full legal authority to change my name, my identity, my story. And they did. But they never told me. I didn't plan to confront them that night. But the anger had been building all week, and when I got a text from my mom, "Want to come over for dinner this weekend? Dad's making chicken parm." Something in me snapped. I didn't wait for the weekend. I drove straight there. When they opened the door and saw me, my mom smiled. My dad gave his usual nod. I walked inside, pulled my phone from my bag, opened the photo of the birth certificate, and slammed it on the counter. "You lied to me." My mom blinked. "What is this?" "You tell me," I said. "Who is Emily Rose, redacted? Why is that my real birth certificate? Why is there a court order that says I was taken out of a cult?" My dad's face went pale. My mom looked like she'd just been slapped. She sat down slowly. My dad didn't. He crossed his arms. "You had no right to dig through that," he said. I laughed, in disbelief. I had no right? To find out who I am? You think this is about privacy? My mom whispered, "We were going to tell you. Eventually." When? At my wedding? On your deathbeds? Or never? And then my dad said the line that nearly made me walk out of their lives forever. "We saved you. And this is how you repay us?" I left that night. Didn't look back. I didn't even cry. Not right away. I drove for hours, ended up sleeping in my car at a rest stop because I couldn't stand to go back to my apartment. Everything felt poisoned. Because here's the thing. I understand why they did it. At least, part of me does. They took in a traumatized 4-year-old girl who didn't know her real name, who may have never been outside the compound, and gave her a new life. They wanted to protect me. But protection is not the same as erasure. They didn't just shield me, they rewrote me. They removed any trace of my past. They pretended I'd never been anyone but Rachel Thompson, their bright, polite, suburban daughter. And that's the part one can't forgive. Because when you steal someone's history, even with good intentions, you also steal their autonomy. It's been 5 days since that night. My parents have texted, called, left voicemails, all saying the same things. We love you. We only wanted to keep you safe. This doesn't change anything. But they're wrong. It changes everything. Because I'm not just Rachel anymore. I'm also Emily. And I don't even know what that means yet. I've started seeing a therapist who specializes in identity trauma and recovered memory. Ethan's been more supportive than ever. He's furious, too, though he admits he suspected something was off for years. As for what comes next? I'm not sure. But I know I'm not stopping. I want to find out what happened in that compound. Who my biological parents were. What they believed. And most of all, why no one ever came looking for me. You ever feel like you're standing at the edge of a cliff, and everyone you thought was behind you suddenly starts pushing? That was me, last Sunday. The day I burned every last bridge at once. After confronting my parents, after finding out I was born Emily Rose, redacted, and rescued from a literal cult, I expected them to react with shame. Or at least some accountability. But instead, I got gaslighting. Tears. Guilt trips. You're ungrateful. You don't understand what we went through to protect you. You're lucky we didn't let them put you in foster care. And maybe the worst line of all. We gave you a better life. You should thank us. But I couldn't thank them. Not when I was waking up in a cold sweat every night, wondering who I might have been if I'd known the truth. Wondering what parts of myself were stolen, erased, rewritten by two people who thought love meant ownership. Still, I kept quiet for a few days. I was trying to process. Journal. Talk to my therapist. Get grounded. But then my mom did something that sent me over the edge. She sent out a family-wide email. Subject line, just some family updates. And buried in the middle, sandwiched between Ethan got a promotion, and we're finally fixing the deck, was a single paragraph. Rachel has been going through a bit of an identity crisis lately, but we're supporting her as best we can. Please respect our privacy and don't. My mom tried to act like nothing had happened. She passed around lasagna and made polite conversation with my Aunt Denise. My dad didn't look at me. My younger brother, Josh, 24M, sat 2 seats down, scrolling his phone and acting annoyed at being there. About 15 minutes in, someone asked, "Rachel, how's work been?" That was it. That was the match. I stood up. I said, quiet, calm. Before we get into small talk, there's something I need to say. Everyone stopped eating. I opened the folder and started passing papers around. One by one. Printouts of the articles. The court orders. The birth certificate. Photos. I made sure everyone got one. Then I said, I found out last week that I'm not Rachel Thompson. Or at least, I wasn't born that way. I was born Emily Rose, redacted, and I was rescued from a cult when I was 4 years old. The state placed me into protective custody. My name was changed. And these two, I pointed at my parents, have known the truth this whole time. Dead silence. My mom looked like she'd stopped breathing. My dad's jaw was locked tight. I kept going. They never told me. Not once. They raised me like nothing happened. They erased my past and pretended I was theirs by blood. I had to hack into my dad's cloud to find out who I really am. And when I confronted them, they called me ungrateful. Gasps. Mutters. I saw heads turning between each other, trying to read the papers in front of them. My Aunt Cheryl looked visibly sick. One of my cousins whispered, "Is this a joke?" My mom finally spoke. Whispered, "Really? Rachel, please. Not here. Not like this." I shot back. "Why not? You didn't mind sending a mass email telling everyone I was having an identity crisis. Want to talk about privacy, Mom? Let's talk about what happens when you lie to your child for 24 years. My dad stood up, walked out of the room, and slammed the door to his office. My mom started crying. And that's when all hell broke loose. Some of my family, my Uncle Tom, Aunt Cheryl, and a couple of cousins, sat there stunned, reading every word of the documents. Cheryl looked up and said, "Renee, is this true?" My mom just nodded, face in her hands. And then the other half of the room exploded. My Aunt Karen stood up and said, "What the hell is wrong with you, Rachel? You're humiliating your parents. At a birthday dinner?" Someone else muttered, "This is cruel." And then Josh, my younger brother, slammed his fork down and snapped. "Are you seriously doing this right now?" I turned to him, stunned. "What? You couldn't just talk to them privately? You had to drag this out in front of everyone?" They lied to me. My entire life. "Yeah, and now you're tearing the family apart." I laughed. Bitter. Sharp. "No, they tore the family apart. I'm just the one who lit the match." He shook his head, grabbed his keys, and stormed out of the house. The dinner ended early. Some stayed behind to comfort my mom. Some left in stunned silence. A few, like my cousin Hannah, texted me later and said, "Thank you. That was brave. You deserved the truth." But the dominant reaction was anger. Directed at me. You know what I've realized? People will tolerate anything, lies, abuse, manipulation, if you do it quietly. What they can't tolerate is disruption. Because when you speak the truth out loud, you force people to look at their own silence. To question what else they might have ignored. They want you to keep smiling. Keep passing the lasagna. Keep pretending. But I'm done pretending. It's been 4 days since that dinner. Josh hasn't spoken to me. My mom texted once, asking if I'd calmed down. My dad hasn't acknowledged me at all. Half my extended family is divided between "you're so brave" and "how dare you." And honestly, I don't care anymore. Because I'm finally done carrying the shame they put on me. I didn't ask to be born into a cult. I didn't ask to be erased. And I didn't ask to be lied to for over 2 decades. All I did was find the truth. And I'm going to keep digging. Because I need to know what happened in those first 4 years. Who my biological parents were. Why no one ever came looking for me. And what else my adoptive family might still be hiding. Do you know what it feels like to burn down your own world? Not by accident. Not with some spark you didn't mean to drop. But on purpose. With both hands. With gasoline and a match. That's what I did 2 weeks ago. I stood up at a family dinner, passed out copies of court documents, and told the entire room that my life was a lie. That I wasn't born Rachel Thompson. That I had been Emily Rose, redacted, rescued from a cult, renamed, and raised by people who built my childhood on silence and secrets. And since then? It's been quiet. But not the peaceful kind. The kind that follows an explosion. The kind that settles in like ash. I've officially been ghosted by my parents. They haven't responded to my texts or calls. They haven't reached out through Ethan. They haven't even done the passive-aggressive "here's a forwarded article about forgiveness" thing they used to do when I disagreed with them in college. Nothing. Just a void. Josh, my younger brother, blocked me. On everything. Socials, phone, email. One of my cousins left me a voicemail calling me disgusting and ungrateful. Said I ruined our family. Said I ambushed my parents and embarrassed them in front of everyone who loved them. Meanwhile, I've gotten a few quiet messages from relatives who said they were proud of me for speaking up. But no one's offering support. No one's inviting me to dinner. I'm out. Ostracized. And yet, for the first time in my life, I feel real. And that's because of what happened next. About 3 nights after the family dinner, I was curled up on my couch, flipping through the court documents for the 100th time. I wasn't even reading anymore. I was just existing. Then I saw it. An old email address. Half faded, scrawled in pen in the corner of a document labeled "Placement Order, Emily Rose." It wasn't from the court. It was from the intake worker who'd handled my case. A note next to it read, "For inquiries re, birth mother contact, consent given, 2007. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. I typed a message. Short. Simple. Subject, reaching out. Body. Hi. I believe I'm the child referenced in this file. Born Emily Rose, redacted. DOB, February 14, 95. Please let me know if this email still reaches you, or her. I'm ready to know the truth. Rachel, formerly Emily." I hit send. And then I shut my laptop and tried not to throw up. The reply. I didn't expect a reply. Or at least not right away. But 5 hours later, at 2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. The notification hit me like a bullet. From Claire R. Subject, Emily. I opened it. And the first line? Oh my God. I never thought I'd hear from you again. I read the message 5 times before I could breathe. She said her name is Claire. She's 43 now. She said she was only 18 when she gave birth to me, terrified, broke, and brainwashed by a man named Jonathan who promised her safety from the outside world. That man was the cult leader. She says the compound started as a community shelter. By the time she realized what it really was, she was already trapped. She told me she tried to run with me once when I was 3, but someone turned her in. She was beaten. She was locked in a shed for 2 days. And after the raid? The state declared her complicit. She said she begged to keep me. Passed every drug test. Completed every parenting class. Got clean. Got help. But the courts didn't believe she could protect me. And for safety reasons, they placed me in a closed adoption, one where neither party would ever know the other's identity. She said she cried for months. She said she's been clean for 18 years. She's remarried now. Has 2 stepkids. A cat. Works as a librarian in a small town. Quiet life. Peaceful. And when she saw my name in her inbox? She said she dropped her phone and cried on the floor. I didn't cry. I just sat there, stunned. Because suddenly this abstract idea of bio mom had a voice. And that voice didn't sound crazy or unhinged or manipulative. She sounded human. She didn't beg to meet. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just said, "If you ever want to know more, I'm here." So now I'm sitting with a choice. Do I go meet her? Do I open that door? Do I sit across from this woman who carried me, lost me, and never stopped looking? Or do I walk away? Do I leave it all in the past and try to build a life forward with no more ghosts? I don't know. I want to know. But I don't know if I can handle it. I've already lost one family. If I lose the second one, too? I don't know who I'll be. And yeah, I keep asking myself. Aita? Was I wrong for what I did? Was it selfish to rip the curtain down at dinner? Was it disrespectful? Was I ungrateful? Or was I finally, after 24 years of living someone else's story, just telling my truth? I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted the truth. But the truth is messy. It doesn't cleanly fit into polite dinners and family photos and holiday cards. It doesn't come with the smell of lasagna and a smiling birthday toast. It wrecks things. And I wrecked things. But maybe they needed wrecking. Ethan's still in my corner. He's pissed at our parents. Pissed at how they handled everything. He told me, "You didn't burn the house down. You just turned on the lights." My therapist says I'm entering a post-traumatic identity reconstruction phase. Sounds clinical. But honestly, it's true. I'm rebuilding. Brick by brick. I don't know what name to use. I still respond to Rachel. But Emily feels like a shadow I need to chase. Maybe I'm both. Maybe I'm neither. Maybe I'm something new. So, Aita? For standing up at a family dinner and telling the truth? For exposing a secret my parents spent 2 decades hiding? For refusing to carry their shame anymore? For answering the question, how's work, with, actually, I used to be a cult baby. I don't know. Maybe I am. But if I had to go back, I'd do it again. Because the truth matters. Even when it costs everything. Especially when it does.
AITA for ruining my dad's wedding with one sentence? So, for context, I'm a 29-year-old guy, and if there's one theme that's run through my life like an annoying background hum, it's the complicated relationship I've always had with my dad. I wouldn't call it purely bad. There were moments when he tried. Moments when he seemed like he wanted to be in my life, but overall, it's been rocky. Really rocky. My parents split when I was 12. If you've ever been 12 and watched your parents' marriage collapse, you know that it feels like the floor just opens up beneath you. At that age, you're old enough to understand what's happening, but not old enough to process it in a healthy way. I remember the exact night my dad packed a duffel bag and walked out. My mom sat at the kitchen table with her hands over her face, and I sat on the staircase pretending I wasn't listening. He promised me, that just because he wasn't living with us anymore, didn't mean he was going to stop being my dad. He said things like, "I'll still come to your soccer games, buddy. I'll still help you with your science projects. This changes nothing between us." And like a dumb kid desperate to believe, I nodded and swallowed it whole. But here's the reality. It changed everything. At first, he tried. He'd pick me up every other weekend, sometimes take me out for pizza or a movie. But as the months dragged on, the visits became sporadic. Then they turned into excuses. Then eventually, I got used to the fact that my dad was basically my holiday parent. He'd show up for my birthday if I was lucky, sometimes for Christmas, sometimes for Thanksgiving. But the day-to-day, the school plays, the soccer games, the dad, "Can you help me with this math homework?" Moments, he wasn't there. And as much as I tried to bury it, that left scars. Fast forward 17 years. I'm 29 now. I've been through my own ups and downs, but I've managed to build a decent life. I've got a steady job, a small circle of friends, and I've tried to keep my family relationships intact where possible. And then out of the blue, my dad calls me one evening. Now, for context, we talk maybe 3 or 4 times a year. That's it. So when I saw his name pop up on my phone, I hesitated before answering. But curiosity won. He starts with small talk, asking about work, about whether I'm still living in the same apartment, and I can hear in his voice that he's nervous. Then he drops the news. He's getting married again. Her name is Laura. He says her name like it's a magic word. like saying it automatically makes everything good. I'd met her twice in passing before. She seemed nice enough. Warm, polite, kind of the I bring cookies when I meet people type. Nothing about her screamed, red flag. But then again, I didn't know her. Dad tells me he wants me at the wedding. He says it like it's obvious I'll come, like despite 17 years of him being mostly absent. My attendance is just a given. And here's the thing. Part of me wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to tell him that if he didn't care enough to be at my milestones, why should I show up for his? But another part of me, maybe the 12-year-old boy still waiting for him to come through, said yes. So I agreed to go. I told myself it would be a chance to maybe reconnect, to start fresh, to show him that even though he'd let me down 1,000 times, I was still willing to be there. The wedding was in a nice suburban venue, one of those places with a white gazebo, fairy lights strung in the trees, and staff members who look like they've been trained to smile no matter what you say to them. I showed up at the rehearsal dinner the night before. I felt out of place almost immediately. Everyone there seemed to know each other. They were laughing, hugging, clinking glasses. And me? I was the outsider, the son who didn't quite fit. Laura greeted me warmly. She hugged me, told me she was so glad I came, and for a moment, I felt like maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe she'd be a bridge. And then came the speeches. My dad stood up at the front of the room with a glass of wine in his hand. He looked around the room like he was soaking in all the approval, all the support. He started thanking people, his fiancée's family for welcoming him, his friends for sticking by him, and then he launched into this part about how he had been through, quote, the darkest years of his life. And here's the kicker. As he said it, he looked directly at me. Not a passing glance, not an accident. He locked eyes with me. I felt it like a punch in the gut, because in that moment, it wasn't just words. It was an accusation. Like he was saying, those years with you and your mom were the darkest years of my life. You were part of my unhappiness. You were part of the problem. The room kept clapping and smiling while I sat there frozen. My face was hot, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I forced a polite smile because what else was I supposed to do? But inside, I was 12 years old again, sitting on the stairs, watching him walk away. The morning of the wedding felt strange from the start. I woke up in the hotel room I'd booked near the venue, staring at the ceiling and trying to psych myself up to face the day. On paper, it was supposed to be a celebration. My dad was getting remarried. People were dressing up, flowers were being arranged, champagne was chilling somewhere in silver buckets. But for me, there was this weight in my stomach that just wouldn't go away. I kept replaying the rehearsal dinner in my head. His words, his tone, the way he looked straight at me when he said he'd been through the darkest years of his life. No matter how many times I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, I couldn't shake the feeling that he meant me and my mom, that we were the darkness. But I told myself to push it down. It was his day. I was here as a guest. And if nothing else, I was here to prove to myself more than him that I could be the bigger person. I ironed my shirt, straightened my tie, went through the motions. I even practiced smiling in the mirror so I wouldn't look like the bitter, estranged son sulking in the corner. By the time I got to the venue, everything looked picture perfect. It was one of those outdoor weddings that looked straight out of a Pinterest board. White chairs lined up in neat rows on the grass. A floral arch at the end of the aisle, soft music playing from hidden speakers. Everyone looked so happy. Everyone except me. The ceremony started off like any other. Guests found their seats, whispered among themselves, snapped photos. The bridal party made their entrances, one by one. Then came Laura, walking down the aisle in her dress. And I'll admit, she looked radiant. She looked every bit the part of a bride who was about to start a new chapter of her life. And for a while, I let myself get swept into it. I clapped when people clapped. I smiled when everyone smiled. I thought, okay, maybe I can just get through this. Maybe I can keep my head down, survive the day, and leave without any drama. But then came the vows. My dad stood there, holding Laura's hands, looking at her like she was the center of the universe. He started talking about how she'd changed his life, how she made him a better man, how she gave him hope again. Typical wedding vow stuff. I didn't even mind. Until he said the line. He said, and I remember every word, "Laura, you are the first person who ever made me believe in real family. The first person." The words slammed into me like a truck. My ears started ringing. My chest tightened. I could feel my face heating up. And before I even realized what I was doing, I was on my feet. It wasn't planned. I hadn't rehearsed it. It just burst out of me. "Really?" I said, my voice louder than I intended. "The first person? What about your actual son?" The silence that followed was deafening. Every head turned. Guests froze mid-breath. My stepfamily's mouths dropped open. Laura's eyes went wide, her face a mix of shock and confusion. My dad's expression? Pure murder. He looked like he wanted to strangle me right there at the altar. And me? My hands were shaking. My knees felt like they were about to give out. But I didn't sit down right away. For a second, I just stood there, heart pounding, staring at him. Finally, I sat back down. My whole body was trembling, but I kept my face forward. I didn't apologize. I couldn't. Not when the man standing there had just erased me with one sentence. The ceremony limped on after that. People clapped at the right moments, forced laughter when it was expected. But the energy was different. Off. And I knew why. I was the reason. I was the disruption. When it was finally over, I didn't even make it out of my seat before I felt the stares. Whispering behind my back. A few pointed glares. Then, one by one, the relatives started cornering me. My aunt was first. "What the hell was that? You ruined his wedding." Then a cousin. "You embarrassed your dad in front of everyone. Couldn't you just keep your mouth shut for once?" Another relative, someone I barely knew, chimed in. "This was supposed to be a happy day. You made it about you." Their words piled on, one after another, like stones in my pockets, dragging me down. And maybe they were right. Maybe I did ruin it. Maybe I did embarrass him. But here's the thing. What was I supposed to do? Sit there while my dad stood in front of everyone, acting like he'd never had a family until Laura came along? Pretend that didn't feel like a knife twisting in my gut? So I stayed quiet. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just absorbed it. Let them say what they wanted. Because deep down, I knew they'd never understand what it was like growing up with him. After the wedding, I didn't hang around for the reception. I couldn't. The second the ceremony was over and the polite applause died down, I slipped out. I didn't even stop by the buffet or the open bar. Didn't wait for cake or dancing. I just left. I walked straight to my car, loosened my tie, and sat there in the parking lot with my hands gripping the steering wheel. My phone buzzed with a couple of texts. One from my aunt, one from a cousin, but I didn't answer. I couldn't face it. I drove back to my hotel, packed my bag, and checked out early the next morning. As far as I was concerned, that was the end of it. My dad and I had had our moment. He made his vows, I made my point, and now we'd retreat back into the usual silence that had defined our relationship for years. And for 2 weeks, that's exactly what happened. Silence. No calls. No texts. No emails. Nothing. Part of me was relieved. No confrontation meant no fallout. But another part of me, this quiet, nagging part, kept wondering if I'd finally crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Maybe this was it. Maybe he was done with me for good. Then the phone rang. It was a Tuesday night. I remember because I had just finished reheating leftovers and was half watching something on Netflix when my phone lit up with his name. My first instinct was to ignore it, let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. I needed to know where we stood. I picked up. The first thing I heard wasn't hello or, "Hey, it's me." It was yelling. "What the hell did you say to her?" I pulled the phone back from my ear. "Dad? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me," he snapped. His voice was sharp, tight, the way it used to get when he was caught in a lie and trying to bluff his way through. "You've been planting seeds in Laura's head. Ever since the wedding, she's been asking me questions. Questions she never would have asked if it wasn't for you." I blinked. "What are you even talking about? I haven't spoken to Laura since the wedding." "Bullshit," he shot back. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. and now you're trying to sabotage my marriage before it's even started. I felt my stomach drop. What questions is she asking? That's when he hesitated, just for a second, but I heard it. That pause that says more than words ever could. She's asking about the past, he finally muttered. About your mom, about the divorce, about things that aren't her business. Things that aren't her business. That phrase hung in the air like smoke. I sat there, gripping the phone tighter. My dad's anger was obvious, but beneath it, I could hear something else. Fear. Why would she be asking about that unless she thinks there's more to the story? I said slowly, "Don't you dare," he snapped. "Don't you dare start this. You stay out of my marriage. Do you understand me? Stay. Out." And then he hung up. I sat there in silence, staring at my phone, my dinner forgotten. If he thought I was meddling, fine. If he wanted to blame me for Laura's questions, fine. But here's the thing. I hadn't said a word to her, which meant the doubts were coming from somewhere else, somewhere inside her. And if she was digging into his past now, what exactly was she finding? About a week after that furious phone call with my dad, I thought things had finally gone quiet again. He'd yelled, accused me of meddling, told me to stay out of his marriage, and then hung up. I figured that was the end of it. We'd retreat back into silence, like we always did. But then, one night, as I was scrolling through my phone, I saw a notification pop up, a Facebook message request. It was from Laura. My heart stopped. I stared at her name on my screen for a solid minute, torn between opening it immediately and throwing my phone across the room. Part of me expected it to be angry. Maybe she was reaching out to tell me off, to tell me I'd ruined her wedding, or that I needed to stop interfering in her marriage. But curiosity won. I opened it. The first line floored me. "Hey, I just wanted to thank you for what you said at the wedding." I blinked. "Read it again." "Thank me?" She went on. "It probably didn't feel like it at the time, but I needed to hear that. I've been carrying doubts for a while now, and when you spoke up, it made me realize I wasn't imagining things." My pulse quickened. I sat up straighter, rereading every word like I was decoding a secret message. Then came the bombshell. "I don't know if you know this, but your dad hasn't been honest with me. He wasn't just with me all these years. He's been living a double life. There's another family in city redacted. A wife, kids, the works. I only found out recently." I felt the air leave my lungs. My hands went cold. I read the sentence over and over, trying to process it. A whole other family? Not just an affair. Not just flings on the side. An entire second life. Laura explained that for a while, things hadn't added up. His business trips, the days when he was suddenly unreachable, the holidays where he always had an excuse for why he couldn't be with her family. At first, she brushed it off, told herself he was busy, that she was overthinking. But then little cracks appeared. A phone bill with unfamiliar numbers, receipts that didn't make sense. Once, she swore she saw a child's car seat in the back of his car, even though neither of them had kids together. She confronted him once, lightly, jokingly. He brushed it off, called her paranoid, gaslit her into silence. But she couldn't shake the feeling. And then came the wedding. When he said I was the first person to make him believe in family, something about it broke me. She wrote, "It was like he was erasing everything that came before. Not just you, but me too." I started thinking, what else is he erasing? That was the moment my outburst connected with her doubts. She told me, "When you stood up and said, 'What about your actual son?' It clicked. I wasn't crazy. There was more to the story." That night, I confronted him again. This time I pushed harder, and he slipped. He didn't come clean all the way, but he said just enough that I knew. He admitted there were other obligations he hadn't told me about. I put the pieces together after that. I sat there staring at my screen, numb. On one hand, I felt vindicated. My dad had spent years making me feel like I was the problem, like my existence was the dark years he'd had to escape. And now, the truth was out. He was the one hiding lies so big they could fill another life. On the other hand, I felt sick. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Laura, who had walked into this marriage thinking she was starting fresh with a man she loved, only to discover she was stepping into a house of cards built on lies. I typed back carefully, "Laura, I had no idea. I promise I never said anything to you on purpose, but thank you for telling me this." She replied almost instantly, "I don't blame you. Honestly, I'm glad you spoke up. I think you saved me from doubting myself forever." I put my phone down and just sat in the quiet for a long time. Because here's the thing. My dad had spent years rewriting history, painting himself as the victim, convincing everyone around him that he was just a man who got unlucky in his first marriage and finally found happiness with Laura. And now, the mask was slipping. Laura had seen it, and now so had I. And for the first time in a long time, I realized maybe the truth was bigger and uglier than I ever imagined. If you thought the story couldn't get any more insane, buckle up, because here's the wildest part. That second family Laura told me about, it wasn't just a fling or some long-term side chick situation. It was a full-on parallel household. A woman, kids, dinners, vacations, the whole suburban dream. And one of those kids? 14 years old. 14. Let me do the math for you. I'm 29 now. My parents divorced when I was 12. That means when my dad was still married to my mom, back when he was making all those promises to me about how this changes nothing, he was already starting up family number 2 on the side. So while my mom was crying at the kitchen table, wondering why her marriage was falling apart, and while I was sitting on the staircase trying to hold my world together, my dad was out there starting over with someone else, planting the seeds of a brand new family like we were just disposable. When Laura dropped that timeline on me, it felt like my chest had been hollowed out, because it meant every excuse he gave us back then, "I'm working late, I've got a trip, things are complicated," wasn't just him bailing on me. It was him investing in someone else's kid, someone else's life, while I sat at home waiting for a dad who never showed up. Here's the kicker. Laura didn't just confront him. She filed for divorce. She told me straight up in another message, "I can't stay with someone who lied to me this deeply. If he could run 2 families at once, what else is he capable of?" And apparently, the other family, the one he's been juggling for over a decade, isn't taking it well either. Because guess what? They thought they were the only family. They thought they were his real commitment. And now, suddenly, they found out they weren't special either. That he was spreading himself thin between 2 households like some deranged magician trying to keep plates spinning in the air. So now, he's on the brink of losing everything. Laura's gone. The other family's furious. And me? I'm watching the house of cards collapse from the sidelines, still processing the fact that my entire childhood was basically collateral damage in his double life. Here's where things get messy. My extended family, the aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole crew, they're split down the middle. Half of them are telling me I did the right thing, that my outburst at the wedding was exactly what needed to happen, that if I hadn't spoken up, Laura might have stayed blind to the truth forever, and my dad would have kept getting away with it. The other half? They think I'm the villain. They think I humiliated him unnecessarily, that no matter how bad he was as a father, no matter what secrets he was hiding, a wedding isn't the place to air dirty laundry. They keep saying I ruined the happiest day of his life. But here's the thing. I didn't ruin his marriage. I didn't break his vows. I didn't create a secret family and lie about it for over a decade. All I did was say one sentence that made cracks in the perfect image he'd been projecting for years. And those cracks revealed the truth. So now I'm sitting here, staring at the wreckage of my dad's carefully constructed double life, and I can't help but ask myself the question that brought me here. Reddit, aita for blowing up at my dad during his wedding vows, even though it ended up unraveling his entire double life? AITA for kicking my roommate out after I found out the truth about her? I never thought I'd be the kind of person to post on Reddit. I always figured my life was too boring, too normal. But something happened recently that I can't explain. Something that's been gnawing at me for weeks, and I need to get it off my chest. So here goes. I'm a 29-year-old guy living in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom apartment with decent lighting, a small balcony, and enough space to feel like I'm not suffocating. I work in tech, mostly remote, which means I spend a lot of time at home. Too much time, maybe. And about 10 months ago, I decided to rent out my spare bedroom. Not for the money, really, I'm doing fine, but for the company. Living alone was starting to feel like a slow descent into madness. I needed someone around, someone to talk to, someone to share space with. Enter Clara. She responded to my online ad within hours of posting it. Her message was polite, articulate, and somehow warm, like she knew exactly how to make a stranger feel comfortable. We met for coffee the next day, and I was sold. She was 27, worked in marketing, had just moved to the area, and needed a place fast. She was clean, respectful, and even offered to sign a lease on the spot. I told her that wouldn't be necessary. We could do month to month and see how it went. From day one, Clara was perfect. I mean that literally. She kept her space immaculate. She paid rent early. She baked cookies on weekends, actual homemade cookies, the kind that made the whole apartment smell like a bakery. She asked before inviting people over, always cleaned up after herself, and even watered my plants when I forgot. It was like living with a character from a feel-good sitcom. I started to wonder if I'd hit the roommate jackpot. But then, things started to shift. It was subtle at first. So subtle I didn't even register it as weird. Just little things. A yogurt missing from the fridge. Package arriving with my name on it already opened. My phone charger vanishing from my desk, only to reappear 2 days later in the exact same spot. I chalked it up to forgetfulness. Maybe I'd eaten the yogurt and didn't remember. Maybe I'd opened the package and left it on the counter. Maybe I'd misplaced the charger and found it later. I told myself I was being paranoid. But the thing about paranoia is, sometimes it's just early awareness. One night, I came home late from a client meeting. Clara was already in her room, door closed, lights off. I tiptoed into the kitchen to grab a drink and noticed something strange. My favorite mug, the one I always kept on the top shelf, was sitting in the sink, dirty, with lipstick on the rim. Clara doesn't wear lipstick, at least not that I've ever seen. I stared at the mug for a long time. It wasn't just the lipstick. It was the fact that I hadn't used that mug in days. I was sure of it. I reached up to the top shelf, and sure enough, it was empty. Someone had taken it down, used it, put it in the sink. And it wasn't me. I didn't say anything the next morning. I didn't want to seem crazy, but I started paying closer attention. And that's when things got unsettling. I began keeping a mental inventory of my belongings. Not obsessively, just casually. My watch, my keys, my headphones, my favorite hoodie. I'd note where I left them and check back later. And more often than not, something would be off. My watch would be on the bathroom counter instead of my nightstand. My hoodie would be folded on the couch when I was sure I'd left it on the chair. My headphones would be plugged into Clara's laptop charger. I started to feel like I was living in a haunted house. Except the ghost was polite and baked cookies. One afternoon, I came home early from a grocery run. Clara wasn't expecting me. I walked in and heard movement from my room. My room. I froze. The door was slightly ajar. Pushed it open slowly, heart pounding. Clara was standing by my desk, holding my notebook. She looked up, startled. "Oh, hey, I was just looking for a pen. I thought I saw one in here the other day." I nodded slowly. "You could have asked." She smiled, sheepish. "Sorry, I didn't want to bother you." I didn't say anything else. Just took the notebook from her and left the room. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment in my head. The way she looked when I caught her. Not guilty, not scared, just surprised. Like she hadn't expected me to be home. Like she'd been caught in the middle of something, but wasn't sure what. I started locking my door. Not just when I left the apartment, when I was inside, when I was working, when I was sleeping. I bought a small camera and installed it discreetly on my bookshelf, facing the door, just in case. I didn't tell Clara. I didn't tell anyone. And then 3 days later, I got my first piece of footage. It was 2:17 a.m. Clara opened my door. Quietly, carefully. She stepped inside, walked over to my desk, and picked up my watch. She held it for a moment, then put it back. She looked around the room, touched the edge of my bookshelf, and left. I watched the video 5 times. She didn't take anything. She didn't move anything. She just looked, like she was inspecting the space, like she was trying to memorize it. I didn't confront her. I didn't know how. What do you say to someone who's sneaking into your room in the middle of the night and touching your things, but not stealing them? What do you say to someone who's perfect on paper, but feels increasingly like a stranger? I started keeping a journal, writing down everything, every odd moment, every misplaced item, every time Clara said something that didn't quite add up. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew something was wrong. And then, last week, I found something I wasn't supposed to. I was cleaning the living room, vacuuming behind the couch, when I noticed a small tear in the fabric. I reached in to see if anything had fallen inside and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a list. My name was at the top. Below it, in Clara's handwriting, were dozens of bullet points. Notes, observations. Wakes up at 7:30. Prefers almond milk. Leaves laptop unattended during lunch. Keeps spare key in drawer. Talks in sleep. I stared at the list for a long time. It wasn't just creepy. It was detailed, intimate, like she'd been studying me, like I was a project, or worse, a target. I haven't confronted her yet. I don't know how to. I don't know what she wants. I don't know what she's planning. But I know this. Clara isn't who I thought she was. And I'm starting to think I was never supposed to find out. This is just the beginning. It's been a week since I found the list. The one Clara wrote. The one with my name at the top and all those eerie little notes about my habits, my routines, my preferences. I've read it so many times now, I could recite it from memory. And every time I do, I feel a little less safe in my own home. But I haven't confronted her. Not yet. I've been trying to act normal. Smiling when she walks into the kitchen. Making small talk about the weather. Pretending I don't notice when she glances at my bedroom door a little too long. I'm playing a role now, one I didn't audition for. The unsuspecting roommate. The oblivious Mark. But I'm not oblivious anymore. And last night, something happened that made everything worse. It was around 6:30 p.m. I'd left work early. Client canceled last minute, and I figured I'd beat Clara home. But when I walked into the apartment, I heard something strange. A voice, soft, muffled, coming from my room. I froze in the hallway, heart pounding. The door was slightly ajar. I crept closer, careful not to make a sound. And that's when I heard it clearly. Clara was whispering. Not to me, not on the phone. Just whispering. Alone. In my room. I pushed the door open slowly, and what I saw made my stomach drop. She was sitting on the edge of my bed, holding my childhood photo album. The one I kept tucked away in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. The one I hadn't looked at in years. She was staring at a photo of me as a kid, maybe 5 or 6 years old, wearing a superhero costume and grinning at the camera. Her lips were moving, but I couldn't make out the words. When she saw me, she jumped. "Oh," she said, laughing nervously. "You scared me." I didn't say anything, just stared at her. She held up the album. "I was just curious. I saw this in your drawer the other day and thought it was sweet. You were such a cute kid." I nodded slowly. "You were in my room." She shrugged. I know. I shouldn't have. I don't know. I wanted to know more about you." I didn't respond. Couldn't. My mind was racing. She stood up, handed me the album, and walked past me like nothing had happened. But something had. Something I couldn't explain. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way she was whispering. The way she looked at that photo. The way she said she wanted to know more about me. It didn't feel like curiosity. It felt like obsession. I checked the camera footage again. She'd been in my room 3 times that week. Always late at night. Always quiet. Sometimes she'd just stand there. Sometimes she'd touch things. My books, my clothes, my framed photos. Once, she sat on my bed for 20 minutes, staring at the wall. I started locking everything. Not just my door, my drawers, my closet, even my laptop. I changed all my passwords, hid my spare key. I stopped leaving anything out. But it didn't matter. Clara always found a way in. And then, 2 nights ago, I woke up to a sound. A soft click, like a door closing. I sat up, heart racing, and listened. Footsteps, in the hallway, heading toward the kitchen. I got out of bed, grabbed my phone, and tiptoed to the door. I opened it slowly and peeked out. Clara was standing in the kitchen, staring into the fridge. She didn't move, didn't reach for anything, just stood there, bathed in the pale blue light. I watched her for a full minute before she turned around. She didn't look surprised to see me. She smiled. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Thought I'd grab a snack." I nodded. "You didn't take anything." She tilted her head. "Guess I wasn't hungry after all." Then she walked past me and went back to her room. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring into the fridge, trying to understand what was happening, trying to make sense of the unease that had taken root in my chest. And then I noticed something. My childhood photo album was sitting on the counter. I hadn't moved it. I hadn't touched it since Clara handed it to me. I opened it slowly. The photo she'd been whispering to was gone. Just gone. I checked every page, every pocket, every drawer in my room. It wasn't there. I haven't asked her about it. I don't want to, because I'm starting to think Clara isn't just curious. I think she's watching me, studying me, and maybe even becoming me. This is far from over. I didn't sleep much after the photo album incident. Every creak in the floorboards, every flicker of light under her door, it all felt loaded. Like Clara wasn't just living in my apartment anymore. She was living in my head. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I bought a motion-activated camera. It was small, discreet, and legal where I live. I tucked it behind a stack of books on my shelf, angled toward my dresser and closet. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends. Not my family. Definitely not Clara. I just needed proof. Something to confirm what I already knew but couldn't admit out loud. Clara was crossing a line. And it wasn't just about boundaries anymore. It was about control. The next day, I went to work like usual. Tried to focus. Tried to pretend everything was normal. But around 2:14 p.m., I got a notification on my phone. Motion detected. I opened the app and watched the footage. Clara had entered my room. Again, she moved slowly, deliberately, walked straight to my dresser, opened the top drawer, pulled out a few shirts, my favorite ones, the ones I wore most often, and laid them out on the bed. Then she took out her phone and started photographing them, one by one. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She adjusted the lighting, smoothed out the fabric, zoomed in on the tags. I watched in stunned silence. She wasn't stealing. She wasn't even touching anything else. She was documenting, cataloging, like she was building a replica or preparing for something. I felt sick. When I got home that night, Clara was in the kitchen, humming to herself. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. "Hey, how was work?" I didn't answer. I walked straight to her and said, "Why were you in my room today?" Her smile faltered. "What?" "I saw you," I said, "on camera. You were taking pictures of my clothes." She went pale. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her mug. "I can explain," but I didn't let her. "I don't want an explanation," I said. "I want you out. End of the month. If you go into my room again, I'll contact the landlord. And the police." She stared at me for a long time, then nodded. "I understand." She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She just accepted it, like she'd known this moment was coming, like she'd already prepared for it. That night, I locked my door and pushed a chair under the handle. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way she looked at my clothes, the way she photographed them, the way she said, "I can explain," like there was a story behind it, a reason, a logic. But I didn't want to hear it. Not yet, because deep down I was afraid of what that explanation might be. Was she trying to become me? Was she studying me for something? Was I part of a game I didn't know I was playing? The next morning, Clara was gone. Not permanently, just out early. Her room was empty, her bed made, her laptop missing. I checked my camera footage again. Nothing new, no movement, no intrusion, but something felt off. Like the silence was too loud, like the calm was manufactured. I started checking my things obsessively. My drawers, my closet, my laptop, my journals. Everything was where I left it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara had left something behind. Not physically, emotionally, psychologically. She'd embedded herself into my routines, my habits, my space. And even though I'd told her to leave, I wasn't sure she ever really would. Because Clara wasn't just a roommate anymore. She was a presence, a shadow, and I was starting to wonder if she'd ever truly been real. The apartment felt different after I told Clara to leave. Not quieter, she was never loud to begin with, but heavier, like the air had thickened, like every corner of the space had absorbed the tension between us and didn't know how to let it go. Clara barely spoke to me after that night. She packed slowly, methodically, one drawer at a time. She avoided eye contact, kept her door closed, and spent hours on her phone. I'd hear her typing late into the night, whispering occasionally, sometimes laughing softly to herself. But she never spoke to me directly, not once, and I didn't push. I just wanted her gone. I counted down the days until the end of the month like I was waiting for a storm to pass. I kept my door locked, my camera running, my guard up. I didn't want any more surprises. No more photo albums. No more whispered confessions. No more invasions. But Clara had one last surprise. On her final night in the apartment, I heard a soft rustle outside my door. I waited a few seconds, then opened it. An envelope was lying on the floor. No name, no markings, just plain white, sealed shut. I picked it up and stared at it for a long time. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of one last word, one last twist, one last moment of control. But curiosity is a powerful thing. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, neat, careful script, the kind of handwriting that looks practiced, intentional. It read, "I'm sorry for not telling you sooner. I didn't know how. I hope someday you'll understand. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to feel close to someone again." That was it. No signature, no explanation, no context, just that. I read it 3 times. The first time I felt nothing, just annoyance, frustration, the kind of irritation you feel when someone tries to make themselves the victim after crossing a line. The second time I felt confused. What did she mean by again? Had she done this before? Was I part of a pattern? A cycle? The third time I felt something else. Unease, because the wording felt unfinished. Like she'd started to confess something but couldn't bring herself to say it. Like she wanted me to know, but not yet. Not directly. I just wanted to feel close to someone again. It echoed in my head for hours. I thought about the list she made, the photos she took, the way she whispered to my childhood pictures, the way she watched me, studied me, moved through my space like she was trying to absorb it. It wasn't just obsession. It was longing, desperation, like she was trying to recreate something, or someone. I started wondering if Clara had lost someone, a brother, a boyfriend, a friend, someone who looked like me, lived like me, someone she couldn't let go of. Was I a replacement, a stand-in, a living replica of someone she couldn't stop missing? I didn't sleep that night. I kept the letter on my desk, staring at it like it might change, like the words might rearrange themselves and give me the answers I needed. But they didn't. The next morning, Clara was gone. Her room was empty. Her key was on the counter. Her scent lingered faintly in the hallway, lavender and something else I couldn't place. I walked into her room for the first time since she moved in. It was spotless. Too spotless. No dust. No clutter. No forgotten items. Just a bare mattress and a folded blanket. But then I noticed something. Tucked behind the radiator, half hidden in the shadows, was a small notebook. I picked it up. It was filled with sketches. Of me. Not detailed portraits, just outlines. Silhouettes. Poses. Me sitting at my desk. Me drinking coffee. Me walking down the hallway. Dozens of them. All dated. All labeled. Some had notes. He looks tired today. He smiled at the barista. He wore the blue shirt again. I felt my throat tighten. This wasn't just observation. It was documentation. Like she was building a character. Or preserving one. I flipped to the last page. There was a single sentence. I hope he never finds out who I really am. I dropped the notebook. I didn't know what to think. Was Clara hiding a past? A secret identity? A mental illness? Was she someone else entirely? I don't know. I still don't. But I do know this. Clara wasn't just a roommate. She was a mystery, and I'm starting to think the story isn't over. Not yet. It's strange how silence can feel louder than noise. After Clara left, the apartment felt hollow. Not just empty, vacant. Like something had been extracted from the walls, the air, the rhythm of my days. I kept expecting to hear her humming in the kitchen, or smell her cookies baking on a Sunday afternoon. But there was nothing, just me, and the echo of everything I didn't understand. I tried to move on. I boxed up the notebook she left behind, tossed the letter under my door, and rearranged the furniture in her room like that would somehow erase her presence. I told myself it was over, that whatever game she was playing had ended. But then came the knock. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I opened the door expecting a delivery. Instead, I found a woman in a dark blazer, holding a folder and a quiet kind of authority. She introduced herself as a private investigator. I didn't speak. I just waited. And then she said something that changed everything. Clara wasn't just your roommate. She was hired to watch you. I felt the world tilt. She was hired by your father, the woman continued. Your biological father. The one you haven't seen in over a decade. Couldn't breathe. He's been sick. Terminal. Pancreatic cancer. He didn't have much time left, and he wanted to make sure you were okay. Safe. Stable. Not involved in anything dangerous. Clara was supposed to observe you discreetly and report back. I sat down, stunned. She liked you, the investigator said, more than she was supposed to. She stopped reporting. She felt guilty. That's why she left. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Betrayal? Relief? Because suddenly, everything made sense. The list, the photos, the whispering, the letter. She wasn't trying to become me. She was trying to understand me, to protect me, to fulfill a promise. 3 days later, I got another letter. This one was from my father's lawyer. He had passed away, and he'd left me everything. A substantial inheritance. Enough to change my life. Enough to start over. Enough to forgive. The letter was short. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I wanted to be. I just didn't know how. I hope Clara helped in some way. Take care of yourself. Dad. I read it over and over. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat there, trying to reconcile the man who left me with the man who sent someone to watch over me. Trying to understand Clara's role in all of it. Trying to decide if I hated her or missed her. And now, weeks later, I keep asking myself the same question. Aita for kicking her out without letting her explain? I didn't know the truth. I didn't know she was trying to help. I didn't know she was caught between duty and emotion. But I also didn't feel safe. I felt watched, studied, manipulated. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Because Clara wasn't just a spy. She was a person. Person who got too close. A person who tried to protect me. A person who left before she could say goodbye. And now I'll never know what she would have said. Aita for refusing to pay after my girlfriend totaled my car? I'm 29 years old, and I've been dating Claire. She's 27. For just over 2 years now. If you asked me a month ago how things were going, I'd have said we were solid. Not perfect, but who is? We've had our fair share of arguments, sure. Some petty, some serious. But through it all, I genuinely believed we were building something real. Something worth fighting for. Claire's always been independent. She's the kind of woman who insists on carrying her own groceries, who hates asking for help even when she clearly needs it. That's one of the things I admired about her early on. She's stubborn, but she's also resilient. She works full-time at a small design firm across town, and until recently, she drove this beat-up silver Honda Civic that had definitely seen better days. The thing rattled like a shopping cart and had a weird smell that she swore was just the air freshener. But I'm pretty sure something was decomposing in the vents. Anyway, about 3 weeks ago, the Civic finally gave up the ghost. She called me from the side of the road, frustrated and nearly in tears. The engine had overheated again, and this time it wasn't bouncing back. She had it towed to a mechanic, who basically told her it would cost more to fix than the car was worth. Claire was devastated. She didn't have the savings to buy a new car outright, and public transportation in our area is, let's just say, not ideal. Her job isn't remote, and she couldn't afford to miss work. So I did what I thought any decent boyfriend would do. I offered her my car. Now I drive a 2018 Toyota Camry. It's not flashy, but it's reliable. I've taken good care of it, regular oil changes, tire rotations, the works. It's my baby. But Claire needed help, and I trusted her. She's always been a cautious driver. No speeding tickets, no accidents. She even lectures me when I roll through stop signs. So I handed her the keys and told her she could use it for the week while she figured out a longer-term solution. She was grateful, hugged me tight, kissed me on the cheek, and promised to treat it like her own. I believed her. The first couple of days were fine. She texted me updates. Made it to work? Thanks again, Red Heart. And your car drives so smooth, OMG. I felt good about helping her out. Like I was being supportive, like we were a team. Then came day 3. It was a Wednesday, and I was at work, buried in spreadsheets and trying to ignore the fact that my lunch was just a sad tuna sandwich. Around 2:17 p.m., my phone rang. It was Claire. I answered, expecting something casual. Maybe a question about the car's Bluetooth or a funny story from her office. Instead, I heard her voice. Shaky. Panicked. I've been in an accident. My heart dropped. I stood up so fast I knocked over my chair. My coworkers glanced over, but I didn't care. I rushed out into the hallway, clutching the phone like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. Are you okay? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. I think so, she said. I mean, I'm not hurt, but the car, it's bad. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My mind raced. I asked where she was, if she needed me to come get her, if she'd called the police. She said she was already talking to them, that the other driver was fine too, and that she'd send me the location. I left work immediately, didn't even tell my boss. Just grabbed my stuff and ran. When I got to the scene, my stomach twisted. My Camry was wrecked. The front end was crumpled like a soda can, the bumper hanging off, one headlight shattered. It was parked on the shoulder, and Claire was sitting on the curb, hugging her knees, looking like she'd just seen a ghost. I knelt beside her and asked again if she was okay. She nodded, eyes glassy. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't see the light change. I thought I had time. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part just wanted to hold her. I settled for silence. The officer came over and explained that Claire had tried to beat a yellow light and ended up getting T-boned by a pickup truck that had the right-of-way. No one was seriously injured, thank God. But the Camry? It was probably totaled. I felt numb. We rode home in an Uber, neither of us speaking much. She kept apologizing, and I kept nodding, but inside, I was spiraling. I trusted her. I'd lent her something important to me, and now it was gone. But it wasn't just about the car. That night, as we sat in my apartment, I started to notice things. Little cracks in the story. She said she was on her way back from work, but the accident had happened nowhere near her office. I asked her about it gently at first. She hesitated. Then she said she'd taken a detour to meet a friend for coffee. A friend I'd never heard of. At a cafe I didn't recognize. Something didn't feel right. And that's when the real unraveling began. When I pulled up to the accident scene, I already knew it was bad. But seeing it in person, that was something else. My Camry, my reliable, well-maintained, paid-off Camry, was crushed. The front end looked like it had been folded in half. Fluids were leaking onto the pavement. The hood was bent upward like a twisted jaw, and the windshield had a spiderweb crack that stretched across the passenger side. It was the kind of damage you don't bounce back from. Claire was sitting on the curb, knees tucked to her chest, her face pale and stunned. I rushed to her first, of course. I didn't care about the car in that moment. I just needed to know she was okay. She nodded, said she wasn't hurt, just shaken. I wrapped my arms around her and tried to breathe. Then I noticed the other driver. He was pacing, red-faced, gesturing wildly as he spoke to the officer. His truck had a dented side panel and a shattered mirror, but compared to my car, it looked like it had walked away with a bruise. He saw me and pointed. "Is that your car?" he shouted. I nodded. "Your girlfriend was texting. She didn't even look up. Blew through the light like it wasn't even there." I turned to Claire, stunned. She didn't deny it. I was just replying to a message," she said quietly. "I didn't think." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The officer confirmed it. Claire had admitted to being distracted. She tried to beat a yellow light while texting and ended up getting T-boned. The other driver had the right of way. There was no ambiguity. It was her fault. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. We rode home in silence again. This time, the air between us was heavier. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was too tired, too overwhelmed. I just kept replaying the moment in my head. Her hands on the wheel, her eyes on her phone, my car, my savings, my trust. All of it crumpled in a split second. The next few days were a blur of insurance calls, paperwork, and stress. The adjuster confirmed what I already knew. The Camry was totaled. Insurance would cover part of the cost, but not all. Between the deductible, the depreciation, and the fees, I was left with a $4,000 gap. For $1,000. That was most of my savings. Money I'd set aside for emergencies, for travel, maybe even for a ring someday. Gone. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things or storm out. That's not who I am. But I did sit Claire down and tell her, calmly but firmly, that she needed to help me pay it back. She nodded, said she understood, said she would. "I'll pay you back," she promised. Every cent. I wanted to believe her, but something in her voice, hesitant, distant, made me wonder. The next week, I started noticing changes. She was quieter, more withdrawn. She stopped texting me during the day, stopped asking how I was doing. When I brought up the money, she got defensive. "I said I'd pay you back," she snapped once. "Can you stop bringing it up every 5 minutes?" I hadn't. I'd mentioned it twice. Then came the missed payments. She said she'd send me $200 from her next paycheck. It didn't come. Then she said she'd Venmo me I asked what kind. She got vague. That's when I started digging. And what I found made my stomach turn. About a week after the accident, things between Claire and me were strained, to say the least. We weren't fighting constantly, but the silence was louder than any argument. She'd stopped staying over as much. Our texts were short, clipped. I felt like I was walking on eggshells every time I brought up the money she owed me, which, by the way, still hadn't materialized. Then, one Thursday afternoon, I got a call from her. Her voice was upbeat, almost cheerful. "I figured out my transportation problem," she said. I blinked. "Oh? Did you find a used car?" "Nope," she said. "I financed a new one. A 2025 Mazda CX-5. It's gorgeous. You have to see it." I paused. "You financed a brand new car?" "Yep. I got a decent interest rate, and the dealership gave me a good deal on the warranty. It's got heated seats, lane assist, all the bells and whistles. I congratulated her, because what else was I supposed to say? I was genuinely glad she had a way to get to work again. But then I asked the obvious question. So, what about the money you were going to pay me back? There was a pause. Oh, she said. Well, I used that for the down payment. I felt my stomach drop. All of it. Yeah, I needed something reliable. I couldn't wait around forever. I tried to stay calm. I really did. Claire, we agreed you'd help me pay back the $4,000 I had to spend because of the accident. You promised. I know, she said, but I needed a car for work. You'll be fine. You make more money than me. That hit me like a slap. It wasn't just the money. It was the principle, the promise, the fact that I'd gone out of my way to help her, and now she was using my generosity as a reason to justify screwing me over. I don't think that's fair, I said. You should have waited, bought something cheaper, at least paid me back first. Her tone shifted instantly. Oh my God, she snapped. You're trying to control my life. What? No, You are. You're acting like I owe you everything just because you lent me your car. Maybe you shouldn't have done that if you couldn't handle the consequences. I was speechless. She kept going. You're making me feel guilty for trying to take care of myself. I needed a car. I'm not going to put my life on hold just because you're upset. I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. This wasn't the Claire I knew. Or maybe it was, and I just hadn't seen this side of her before. I ended the call quietly, told her I needed time to think. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the ceiling, wondering how we'd gotten here. How a simple act of kindness had turned into a financial and emotional disaster. How the woman I thought I loved could look me in the eye and say, "You'll be fine," like my savings and trust were disposable. And then I started asking myself the question I'd been avoiding. Was this relationship even salvageable? I thought things couldn't get worse. After Claire totaled my car, used the money she owed me to finance a brand new vehicle, and then told me I was trying to control her life, I figured we'd hit rock bottom. I was already emotionally drained, financially gutted, and questioning everything I thought I knew about her. But then came the twist I never saw coming. It started with a casual text from my friend, Jordan. He's one of those guys who notices everything. License plates, bumper stickers, weird coincidences. He's also brutally honest, which is why I trust him. "Hey," he wrote, "saw Claire driving yesterday. Thought she got a new car." I blinked at the message. "She did," I replied. "A Mazda CX-5. Why?" Jordan sent back a photo. It was Claire, clear as day, driving her old silver Honda Civic. The same car she swore was dead. The one she said had overheated and wasn't worth fixing. The one she had towed and declared a lost cause. I stared at the photo for a long time. The Civic looked fine. A little dusty, sure, but intact. No smoke, no damage. Just Claire behind the wheel, sunglasses on, like nothing had ever happened. I called Jordan. "Where did you see her?" "Corner of 5th and Maple," he said. "She was turning into that little strip mall with the bakery." I almost waved, but she looked like she was in a hurry. I thanked him and hung up. Then I called Claire. She didn't answer, so I did what any confused, slightly paranoid boyfriend would do. I drove to her cousin's house. The same cousin she'd mentioned once or twice. The same cousin who, according to her, had helped her figure out the car situation. And there it was, parked in the driveway, looking perfectly functional. The silver Honda Civic. I knocked on the door. Her cousin answered. He looked surprised to see me. "Hey," I said. "Is Claire here?" He shook his head. "Nah, she left a few minutes ago. Took my car." I blinked. "Your car?" "Yeah, the Mazda. She's borrowing it for a bit." I felt my stomach twist. "So, that's not hers?" He laughed. "Nope. She's thinking about getting one like it, though. Wanted to see how it drives." I nodded slowly. "And the Civic?" "Oh, she just parked it here." Said she didn't want to deal with the repairs right now. I asked what was wrong with it. Alternator, he said. I offered to help fix it. It's like $300 tops. But she said she'd rather just borrow something nicer for a while. I thanked him and left. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the Civic. The car she'd claimed was broken beyond repair. The car she'd used as an excuse to borrow mine. The car she'd lied about, just so she could test drive a nicer ride. It all clicked. She never needed my car. She wanted it. She wanted the experience of driving something newer, smoother, more comfortable. She wanted to feel what it was like to live a little more luxuriously. And she never expected to crash it. That part wasn't part of the plan. And the new car she'd been showing off, the one she said she financed, that was just another lie, another borrowed illusion. I felt sick, not just because of the money, not just because of the wrecked Camry, but because of the betrayal, the manipulation, the fact that she looked me in the eye and told me she was struggling, when really, she was scheming. I drove home in silence. That night, I texted her. I saw your Civic, and I talked to your cousin. She replied an hour later. Okay, so, I didn't respond, because at that point, I realized something important. This wasn't just about a car. This was about trust, about respect, about the kind of person she really was. And I wasn't sure I could ever look at her the same way again. I knew the confrontation was inevitable. After everything, Claire lying about her Civic being totaled, borrowing my car under false pretenses, crashing it while texting, using the money she owed me to test drive her cousin's Mazda, and pretending she'd financed a new car. I couldn't keep swallowing my anger, so I called her. She didn't answer. I texted. No reply. Finally, I showed up at her apartment. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't dramatic. I just wanted answers. Closure. Accountability. She opened the door, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I talked to your cousin, I said. I saw your Civic. I know it wasn't broken. You lied. She didn't flinch. I didn't lie, she said. I just didn't want to fix it. That's not what you told me. She shrugged. I didn't think it mattered. I stared at her, stunned. You borrowed my car under false pretenses. You totaled it. You promised to pay me back. Then used the money for a down payment on a car that isn't even yours. And now you're ghosting me. She rolled her eyes. It's just a car, she said. You're acting like I ran over your dog. That line hit me like a slap. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe remorse, maybe an apology. But that was pure deflection. Minimization. A refusal to acknowledge the damage she'd done. Not just to my finances, but to our relationship. I told her I wasn't going to help her with anything, financially or otherwise, until she paid me back. That I couldn't trust her anymore. That I felt used. She scoffed. You're making me feel guilty, she said. You're trying to punish me. I'm asking you to take responsibility. She didn't respond. Since then, she's been ghosting me. No texts, no calls, no visits. Unless I apologize for making her feel bad. She wants nothing to do with me. And now I'm stuck. My friends are split. Half of them say she's manipulative, that she used me, lied to me, and is now gaslighting me into thinking I'm the villain. They say I should walk away, cut my losses, and never look back. The other half say it's not worth losing a relationship over material stuff, that cars can be replaced, that people make mistakes, that maybe I'm being too rigid. But here's the thing, it's not just about the car. It's about trust, about honesty, about the fact that I tried to help someone I loved, and she turned it into a game, a test drive, a lie. So now I'm asking the internet, am I the asshole for refusing to pay for her new car, which doesn't even exist, until she pays me back for the one she wrecked? Because right now, I feel like I'm the only one who sees how messed up this really is. Aita for ruining my friend's dream job without telling them? I'm sitting here staring at my phone, scrolling up through the last dozen text messages between me and Alex, and I can't shake the pit in my stomach. This feeling has been gnawing at me for weeks now, but today it's worse. Let me back up. I'm 28 years old, And my best friend, let's call him Alex, is 29. We've known each other for over a decade. I don't mean, oh yeah, we hung out a few times in high school level of friendship. I mean ride or die, the kind of best friends who know each other's deepest secrets, who've seen each other at our lowest lows and highest highs. We met in college, back when we were just a couple of broke kids trying to figure out who we were. It was sophomore year. I was nursing a lukewarm beer at some house party that smelled like cheap vodka and even cheaper cologne, when this guy with messy brown hair and a contagious laugh bumped into me, literally spilled half his drink down my hoodie. Most people would have just mumbled sorry and kept walking. Not Alex. He pulled some crumpled napkins out of his pocket, apologized about a dozen times, and then spent the rest of the night talking to me like we'd been friends for years. By the end of the night, we were sitting on the curb outside, talking about everything from our favorite movies to how we both thought pineapple does belong on pizza. A controversial take. I know. From that night on, we were inseparable. We went through everything together: wild college parties, late-night road trips, failed talking stages, actual relationships, breakups, and the occasional we need to move out of this apartment at 3 a.m. because our landlord is insane situations. Alex was the kind of friend who would pick you up at the airport at 2 in the morning without hesitation. No questions asked. He'd drive 2 hours just to help you move a couch. And I'd do the same for him. But while I somehow stumbled into a career path that started to work out for me, Alex didn't. It wasn't for lack of trying. I watched him grind for years: freelance gigs, short-term contracts, part-time retail jobs to keep the bills paid. He'd get close to something promising, and then it would fall through. Sometimes it was bad luck. Sometimes the company downsized. Sometimes it was just not the right fit. By the time we were both pushing 30, I could tell it was starting to wear him down. Alex never complained much, but I could see it in the way he stopped talking about the future, the way he laughed less, the way "I'm fine" became his default answer to everything. Then one night I get this call from him. "Dude," he says, and I can hear the excitement in his voice. "You are not going to believe this. My dream job just opened up." It was with this big tech company, a household name, the kind of place that people would literally relocate across the country for. I knew Alex had always wanted to work there. He talked about it like a kid talks about wanting to be an astronaut. "This is it," he told me. "This could change my life." And I believed him. We went all in. For the next 2 weeks, we treated preparing for his application like it was a second job. I helped him redo his resume from scratch, focusing on measurable results, cleaning up the formatting, making sure it looked professional. We ran through mock interviews until 2 a.m., me throwing technical questions at him and playing the role of a skeptical hiring manager. I even taught him a few little tricks for answering behavioral questions, stuff I'd picked up from being on the other side of the hiring process. When he finally hit submit on that application, he was buzzing. A month later, he calls me again. I answer, and before I can even say hello, he's shouting into the phone, "I got the interview." I could hear the pure joy in his voice. It was the kind of moment where, if we'd been in the same room, I would have hugged him. We started planning our next round of prep. I was already thinking about what suit he should wear, how early he should arrive, the perfect thank you email to send after. I was in it with him, and then something happened. We were sitting at my kitchen table one night, running through possible interview questions, when he casually mentioned the name of the hiring manager. And my brain froze. I knew that name, not just in the "oh yeah, I've heard of them" way. No, I knew this person very, very well. So well that my stomach dropped the moment he said their name. When Alex said the hiring manager's name, I actually laughed at first. Not because it was funny, because I thought I'd misheard him. My brain was scrambling to connect dots that I didn't want to connect. "What was that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He repeated it, and I felt my stomach knot. Jordan. I knew that name all too well. They weren't just a LinkedIn connection or some random networking acquaintance. Jordan had been my direct supervisor at a job I held 2 years ago. Back then, I thought landing that role had been one of the best things that had ever happened to me. Career growth, good pay, an exciting team. But what I didn't know was that I was stepping into a minefield, and Jordan was the one holding the detonator. From day one, they had this way of making me feel like I was already failing, no matter what I did. The first week on the job, I turned in a report that I'd spent hours perfecting. Clean formatting, double-check numbers, clear recommendations. They looked at it for maybe 30 seconds before smirking and saying, "Cute effort. But this isn't how we do things here." No guidance, no constructive feedback, just that little jab to make me feel small. And that was only the beginning. Within a month, I started hearing whispers from other coworkers about things Jordan had supposedly said about me. Apparently, I was unreliable, too slow to keep up, and always on my phone. Funny thing was, I barely even touched my phone at work. Jordan was manufacturing a narrative, and I couldn't figure out why. Then came the project. It was the biggest thing I'd worked on at that company. Months of research, planning, coordinating with multiple departments. It was a beast of a task, but I poured everything into it. And when it succeeded, when it got recognition from upper management, Jordan somehow found a way to twist it so that they looked like the driving force behind it. I still remember sitting in a meeting, listening to them describe their vision for the project, almost word for word the pitch I had given them months before. They didn't just take credit, they erased me from my own work. That was the moment I decided I was getting out. When I finally left that job for a better opportunity, I walked out with a vow. I would never, under any circumstances, deal with Jordan again. I blocked their number, unfollowed them on everything, and swore that chapter of my life was closed. Or so I thought. Now here I was, sitting across from my best friend, watching him beam about this life-changing opportunity, only to realize the gatekeeper was the one person I despised most in my professional life. I should have said something right then, should have warned him, told him what kind of person Jordan really was. But the words caught in my throat, because Alex was glowing. I hadn't seen him this happy in years, and telling him the truth would have been like slamming the brakes on his dream before he even got to try. Still, the knot in my stomach wasn't just about Jordan. I also knew something else, something about that company, something I'd learned the hard way. It wasn't just Jordan that was toxic, it was the whole environment. They had a churn and burn culture, high turnover, unrealistic expectations, and behind closed doors, shady business practices that could ruin someone's career if they got caught up in them. I'd heard rumors from people still there. Non-compete clauses that trapped employees, sudden layoffs right before bonus season, projects getting buried if they made the wrong person look bad. It was the kind of place that looked shiny on the outside but was rotting underneath. And now my best friend was about to walk straight into it. Here's the thing about being best friends with someone for over a decade. You know their dreams, their fears, their patterns. You also know how fragile certain hopes can be. That's what made this decision so excruciating. If I told Alex the truth, if I looked him in the eye and said, "Hey, your dream job's gatekeeper is a vindictive liar who once tried to destroy my career. And by the way, the company is a corporate meat grinder," he might think I was jealous, or bitter, or worse, trying to hold him back because I didn't believe in him. And in some twisted way, I did believe in him. I believed he was smart enough, talented enough, determined enough to thrive, if he found the right place. But I also knew that this wasn't it. I'd seen too many good people get eaten alive there, spat out with nothing but burnout and a black mark on their resumes. Still, that left me with the other option. Stay quiet. And if I stayed quiet, Alex might get the job. He'd have his moment of triumph, the finally, I made it high, but I also knew how it would end. I could see the entire arc playing out in my head. Late nights turning into early mornings, constant pressure, impossible goals, the slow erosion of that spark in his eyes. Then, one day, a blindsiding layoff or a trumped-up performance review tanking his reputation. I couldn't watch that happen. Not to him. So, I did the unthinkable. It was a Tuesday night. I was sitting in my apartment, lights low, laptop open. My cursor hovered over the compose button for a long time. When I finally started typing, I kept it short, professional, vague. I reached out to Jordan. I told them, without giving specifics, that I knew the candidate named Alex. That while he was a decent person, I wasn't sure he'd be a culture fit for the company. I chose those words carefully. Culture fit is HR poison. It's non-committal, but it plants a seed of doubt. It's the kind of phrase that makes a hiring manager think, huh, maybe there's something here I don't see yet. I didn't go into details. I didn't smear his skills or his character. Just nudged the door shut. Before I could overthink it, I hit send. Then I closed my laptop, grabbed my keys, and went for a drive. No destination, just me and the hum of the road. I told myself I was protecting him, that years from now, he'd thank me for sparing him from what was waiting on the other side of that job offer. I didn't check my messages for the rest of the night, and I never followed up with Jordan. No explanation, no second conversation. I'd done what I thought needed to be done, and I wanted it buried. A week later, I was at work when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Alex. Just one line. They passed on me. A few seconds later, another, got the "we've decided to move forward with other candidates" email. I could almost hear the weight in his voice, even through text. I typed back something supportive. "They're lost, man. You'll find something better." But it felt hollow. That night, he came over. We sat on my couch, him nursing a beer and staring at the floor. I really thought this was it," he said. His voice cracked, just slightly. "You know, like, finally." I told him he'd land somewhere even better. I told him he was too good for that company anyway. And he nodded. He even smiled, a little. But deep down, I knew the truth. I just killed his dream before he even got the chance to try. The week after Alex got that rejection email, things were quiet. He wasn't his usual self. Less texting, fewer memes, no random "you up?" calls at midnight. He'd still reply if I reached out, but it was shorter, more muted. I told myself it was just the sting of rejection. Everyone needs time to lick their wounds, right? And to his credit, after a few days, he seemed to be pulling himself together. He updated his LinkedIn. He started browsing job boards again. We even met up for coffee one afternoon, and for the first time since the rejection, I caught a glimpse of his old smile. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd done the right thing. Sure, I'd been the silent villain in his story, the one who'd pulled the strings behind the curtain, making the big bad opportunity vanish. But if it saved him years of misery, wasn't that worth it? I convinced myself it was, until the phone call. It was a Thursday night, about 9 p.m. I was halfway through a Netflix binge when my phone lit up with Alex's name. I answered, expecting the usual "what's up" kind of conversation. Instead, his voice came through, sharp and flat. "You won't believe this. I ran into Jordan at a networking event." I froze. My heart started pounding. He kept going. "They told me you warned them about me. Said you reached out. Said I wasn't a culture fit." I closed my eyes. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I might be sick. "They said they were willing to overlook my lack of experience, but after your message, they couldn't risk it." I didn't say anything right away. My mouth was dry, my brain scrambling for the right words. Anything that would make this sound less like the betrayal it clearly was. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, I started to speak. I told him about Jordan, about the way they treated me, about the things I'd seen at that company. I told him I'd only done it to protect him, that I didn't want to see him get crushed by the same toxic machine that had almost destroyed me. He let me finish, and then, with this quiet finality in his voice, he said, "You could have told me the truth. You didn't even give me the chance to decide for myself." No anger, no yelling, just disappointment. And somehow, that hurt worse. I couldn't shake Alex's voice from my head. That quiet, measured, "you didn't even give me the chance to decide for myself," kept replaying on a loop, like a song you can't turn off. For the next 2 days, I walked around with this hollow pit in my chest. I'd check my phone, half expecting him to text, but nothing came. No memes, no updates, no "hey, you free this weekend?" It was like a switch had been flipped. I told myself I just needed to give him space, that maybe after a week or two, he'd see I'd been looking out for him in my own flawed way. Maybe he'd forgive me, and then, 2 days later, the universe decided to twist the knife. I was at work, finishing up a report, when my phone rang. It was my current boss. Not unusual, we talk a lot. But this time, their tone was off. "Hey," they said slowly. "I wanted to bring something to your attention. I got a call from someone named Jordan." My stomach dropped. They said they used to work with you, and they also mentioned that you've been interfering with other people's career opportunities. I sat there, speechless. They implied you might be a liability to our company culture, my boss continued. I swear, my ears were ringing. I tried to explain, to put it into context, but I could hear in my boss's voice that the seed of doubt had already been planted, just like I'd planted in Jordan's mind about Alex. The irony was sickening. By trying to protect my best friend from what I saw as a toxic environment, I'd become exactly the kind of person I despised. Someone who plays politics, manipulates situations behind people's backs, and damages careers. Now, I'm sitting here with no best friend, a boss who's looking at me differently, and this gnawing realization that maybe I wasn't the hero in this story. Maybe I was the toxic one all along. So, AITA for stopping my best friend from getting his dream job without telling him? ITA for refusing to help my neighbor's dying son? You know how every neighborhood has its feel? Like, some places are all hustle and bustle, people coming and going, cars zooming past, no one really stopping to say hi. But my little suburban pocket of the world is the opposite of that. I've lived here for 6 years. Not a huge amount of time, but long enough to have put down roots. It's the kind of neighborhood where people still wave at each other, where the mailman knows your dog's name, and where Christmas decorations start going up the second Halloween ends. We have block parties twice a year, one in the summer with potlucks and bounce houses, and one in the winter where we light up the street like a Hallmark movie. There's a Saturday morning dog walking group that snakes down the sidewalks like some adorable parade. Parents stand at the ends of driveways chatting while their kids ride bikes in the cul-de-sac. It's nice, predictable, safe. And for most of those 6 years, I've lived quietly. I'm not a recluse or anything. I mow my lawn on the weekends. I wave to the neighbors. I've lent out the occasional power drill or cup of sugar. People know me. Mike, the guy with the navy blue house and the giant golden retriever who loves belly rubs. But I'm not exactly the center of attention either. I like my peace. I work from home, graphic design, and I don't have kids, which makes me a bit of an outlier around here. Most of my neighbors are families, couples with 2.5 kids, dogs, minivans. Still, I've always tried to be a good neighbor. Which brings me to Mark. Mark lives right next door. He moved in about a year after I did, mid-40s, a little scruffy but solid guy. Divorced, I think, though we never really talked much about it. What stood out most about him wasn't Mark himself, but his son, Ethan. Ethan is 10 now, and probably one of the brightest, sweetest kids I've ever met. The kind of kid who waves at everyone, always has some weird science fact ready to share, and once helped me chase my dog down the street when she got loose. But about a year ago, Ethan got sick. Really sick. At first, I thought it was just a cold that wouldn't go away. Then it was missed school days. Then I started noticing the medical transport van pulling up in front of their house. Eventually, word got around, Ethan had been diagnosed with a rare immune disorder. One of those things you only ever hear about on medical dramas or the sad part of a GoFundMe post. And speaking of that, the neighborhood rallied. It was actually kind of amazing. People set up meal trains, organized fundraisers, donated money. There was a GoFundMe that raised nearly $30,000 in the first few weeks. Mark had to quit his job to care for Ethan full-time, and everyone pitched in however they could. I did my part, too. Donated a good chunk to the fund. Spent a couple weekends helping some neighbors build a ramp for their front door so Ethan could get inside more easily in his wheelchair. Drove them to the hospital once when their old sedan broke down. Little things, really nothing heroic. Just what you'd hope someone would do for you if the roles were reversed. But a few weeks ago, everything changed. It was a Thursday afternoon. Hot, sticky. The kind of day where even the breeze feels like a hair dryer in your face. I was in my garage, trying to fix the loose panel on my lawnmower, when I heard footsteps coming up the driveway. I looked up, wiping grease from my hands, and saw Mark. He looked tired. Not just long day tired, like worn down by life tired. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble creeping in. shirt rumpled like he'd slept in it. "Hey, Mike," he said, voice low. "You got a minute?" "Yeah, sure. Everything okay?" He glanced around, like he didn't want anyone to hear. "Can we talk inside?" Now, let me just pause here and say that never happens in my neighborhood. People chat on sidewalks, over fences, standing on lawns with beers in hand. You don't ask to go inside unless it's serious. So yeah, my radar pinged immediately. I led him into my kitchen, offered him a water, and we sat down at the island. My dog, Maple, curled up by my feet, sensing the tension. Mark didn't waste time. "I need a favor," he said. I nodded slowly. "Okay, what kind of favor?" He looked at me, dead in the eyes. "A big one." Turns out, big was an understatement. Mark explained, haltingly at first, that Ethan's condition had worsened. The treatments were no longer working, and the doctors were trying to get him into a specialized program across the country. Problem was, it was out of network. Insurance wasn't going to cover it. The program required a 6-month commitment. They'd need to temporarily relocate, and they couldn't afford it. Not even close. He paused, clearly struggling, then said something that made my stomach knot. "I need someone to watch the house, and to take care of some things while I'm gone." I frowned. "Of course. You mean like, bring in the mail, water the plants?" He hesitated. "Not exactly." Then he pulled out an envelope. Inside was a set of documents, legal-looking, lots of tiny print, and a single-page letter handwritten by Mark. The gist? He wanted me to temporarily assume power of attorney for him while he was gone. I just stared at him. "Dude," I finally said, "that's a lot." "I know," he said quickly. "I wouldn't be asking if I had anyone else. I trust you, and Ethan, he adores you. You're the only one he talks about besides me. Please, Mike, just until we get back." I didn't know what to say. Power of attorney? That's not watch my plants while I'm gone. That's manage my life in my absence. Finances, decisions, even medical stuff if something went wrong. "Mark, man, are you sure this is the only option?" He nodded. "I've asked everyone I can think of. My parents are gone. My ex, she's not in the picture anymore. Friends moved away. You're the only person I know who's stable, who's here, and who's decent." I was floored, flattered, but also freaked out. I told him I needed time to think. He said he understood. He left the envelope with me and walked back to his house. And that was the moment everything started unraveling. For the next couple days, I didn't sleep much. I read through the documents, Googled the legal terms, talked to a lawyer friend, without giving names. Every time I thought about saying yes, I imagined worst-case scenarios, identity theft, financial disasters, him disappearing and leaving me holding the bag. But every time I thought about saying no, I pictured Ethan. Pale, fragile, hooked up to machines, trusting me. Eventually, I agreed. With conditions. I told Mark I'd sign temporarily with an expiration date and with boundaries. No selling assets, no making major financial moves without checking in. Just covering bills, keeping the house running, handling day-to-day stuff. He was beyond grateful. Hugged me, nearly cried. That weekend, he and Ethan left. I helped them load up the car, watched them drive off. And then I was alone next door to a house I now technically had some control over. That's when I found the first red flag. It started with the mail. I noticed a few letters marked urgent from a bank I didn't recognize. I brought them in, figuring I'd just forward them or stash them for Mark. But one was already half open, like it had been ripped then tucked back together. Inside, a warning of foreclosure proceedings. Apparently, Mark hadn't paid the mortgage in 4 months. I double-checked the documents he gave me. Nowhere had he mentioned that the house was on the verge of being taken. I tried calling him. No answer. Texted. No reply. I left a voicemail. 2 days passed. Then I got a message back. Short and vague. "Don't worry. It's being handled." But it didn't feel handled. It felt like I was stepping onto a rotting floorboard and hearing it creak beneath me. I didn't want to snoop, but I had legal access now. So I did. And what I found in that house started peeling away everything I thought I knew about Mark. After my neighbor Mark left town with his son Ethan for a 6-month medical program, I agreed hesitantly to hold temporary power of attorney. It was supposed to be simple. Manage a few bills, keep the lights on, water the lawn, forward mail. But then I discovered Mark hadn't paid his mortgage in 4 months, and he never told me. I tried contacting him, but he ghosted me for days, eventually sending one cryptic text, "Don't worry, it's being handled." Handled how, though? The sense of unease crept in fast. The more I poked around the house. Legally, mind you, as someone with POA, the more things didn't add up. Unopened letters from debt collectors, prescription bottles with different names, a spare phone hidden in a sock drawer. But all of that pales in comparison to what happened next. Because one evening, about 3 weeks after Mark left town, he called me out of the blue. Not to talk about the house, not to update me on Ethan, but to ask me for something much more personal. It was a Tuesday, late, just past 9:30 p.m. I was on the couch with a blanket and a cold beer, watching reruns of The Office, trying to forget the growing list of problems that came with being Mark's trusted neighbor. My phone buzzed. "Mark, hey, got a sec to talk?" I sighed. "Sure, call me." He called almost immediately. His voice was quieter than usual, not in a bad way, more careful, like someone walking across thin ice. "Hey Mike, I hate to do this to you, but I wanted to ask something, and you're totally allowed to say no. Seriously, that's always a bad sign. When someone pre-apologizes and frames it like that, you know something heavy is coming." I braced myself. "What's up?" He hesitated, then said it in one breath, like he was afraid of scaring me off. "I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to get tested as a bone marrow donor for Ethan." I was stunned, not just surprised, stunned. Took me a second to find words. "Wait, what? You mean like now?" "Yeah," he said. "They're starting to screen potential donors. We've hit a wall with matches. And since you're, healthy and close, I thought maybe..." "I'm not family," I cut in gently. "I know, but there's a chance. They said even unrelated donors have made it through." I paused. He was being calm, respectful. No pressure in his voice. No pleading. Just tired hope. But inside, my stomach dropped. See, what Mark didn't know, what nobody in the neighborhood knows, is that I have a complicated medical history. I've been living with an autoimmune condition for over a decade. It's manageable now, thanks to treatment and some lifestyle changes. But it's left scars, physically, mentally, emotionally. Hospitalizations. Years of trial and error. The feeling of your own body turning against you. I don't talk about it. Ever. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I just don't want to relive it. And frankly, I don't know anyone those details. So in that moment, I had to draw a line. I took a breath and said, "I'm really sorry, man, but I'm not comfortable going through with that." Silence. Not the sharp, awkward kind. Just a pause, like he was processing. Then he said, "Okay, thanks anyway." And that was it. No argument. No passive-aggressive comments. He hung up a few minutes later after some small talk. I went to bed relieved. That relief lasted less than 12 hours. The next morning, everything felt different. Started small. I stepped outside to bring my trash bins back from the curb. Normally, this would involve at least 2 or 3 neighborly waves. A nod from old Mrs. Kerrigan across the street. Maybe a quick, "Hey Mike," from one of the dads pushing a stroller. But this time, nothing. I saw them. They saw me, and they looked away. Mrs. Kerrigan turned and shut her blinds. Jeff, the guy 2 houses down, looked right at me, and then walked back inside without a word. Weird. Maybe it was just a weird day? I shrugged it off. People have off days, right? But then I checked my mailbox, and inside, no envelope, no postage, was a note, folded in half. One sentence. No name. "You selfish coward. Hope you sleep well." My heart dropped. I stood there, just staring at it. Then I looked up, half expecting someone to be watching from a window, but no one was in sight. I went back inside, locked the door, and sat down at the kitchen table. How the hell? And then it clicked. Mark. He must have told someone. Maybe he vented to another neighbor. Maybe he mentioned it casually. Or maybe he was angry at my refusal and decided to frame it in a certain light. He said no, wouldn't even get tested, didn't even try to help Ethan. And like wildfire, that version of the story spread. By the end of that week, I was a pariah. Neighbors I'd known for 6 years. People I'd built ramps with, shared drinks with at block parties, suddenly had nothing to say. No waves, no greetings, just closed doors and cold shoulders. Someone posted anonymously in our neighborhood Facebook group, talking about how some people pretend to care until it actually matters. The comments were full of vague responses, but enough people knew who it was aimed at. I even saw one reply, "He didn't even try to be a match. Who does that?" I could have spoken up. I could have defended myself. I could have said, "I'm dealing with my own health problems. I've spent years in hospitals. I can't risk going through that again. Not for a test, not for anyone." But I didn't, because what would that accomplish? Would they believe me? Or would they think I was making excuses? I stayed quiet, but the damage was done. Then it got worse. One evening I found tire marks on my lawn. Fresh, deep ones, like someone had spun out. A trash bag was left on my porch, filled with what I can only describe as waste. Literal garbage. A kid, one of the teenagers from the corner house, yelled, "Baby killer," at me while biking past. And through it all, Mark said nothing. I texted him calmly, asking if he had talked to anyone about our conversation. He replied, "I just said you declined. That's it. No apology. No clarification. Just that." I was stunned. He had watched the entire neighborhood ostracize me for a deeply personal decision, and he didn't lift a finger to set the record straight. The irony? I'd given him power of attorney to help him. I was managing his bills, talking to the bank, trying to figure out what the hell to do about the impending foreclosure. And this is how he repaid me? By letting me become the villain in some unspoken neighborhood morality play? I was livid, but more than that, I was hurt, because I had spent years being the kind of neighbor who helped without asking anything in return. The guy who gave generously, who stayed out of drama, who kept his head down and his heart open. And one decision, one private, medical, reasonable decision, had flipped my entire life upside down. I wish I could say this is where it ended, but something even stranger happened next. I started getting letters from lawyers. Apparently, someone had submitted a complaint about inappropriate use of power of attorney. The bank had been contacted by an anonymous source claiming I was mismanaging Mark's assets while he was away. It was clear. Someone was trying to get me removed, and I had a horrible, gut-churning feeling I knew exactly who it was. If you're just catching up, let me give you the shortest recap I can. I live in a suburban neighborhood where everyone knows everyone. Block parties, holiday lawn wars, the whole deal. Quiet, friendly, harmless. Until it wasn't. My neighbor Mark, a single dad with a sick son named Ethan, asked me for a massive favor before leaving town for an experimental medical program. Temporary power of attorney. Just for bills and basic responsibilities. Nothing crazy. I agreed. Then everything started to unravel. I discovered foreclosure notices, hidden debt, ghosted texts, cryptic answers, and then weeks later, Mark dropped a bomb. He asked me to get tested as a bone marrow donor for Ethan. What he didn't know, and what I didn't tell him, is that I have a long, traumatic history with my own autoimmune illness. The kind that involved years of medications, hospitalizations, even near-death experiences. The kind of thing that makes invasive medical testing dangerous for me. So I said no. Politely, respectfully, privately, and for 12 hours I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong, because the next day the neighborhood turned on me. It started subtly. People stopped waving, stopped making eye contact. Conversations went quiet when I walked up. Then came the anonymous note in my mailbox calling me a selfish coward. Then tire tracks on my lawn, trash on my porch. A teenager screamed, "Baby killer," while riding his bike past my house. And then came the final blow. I was removed from the neighborhood group chat. Now listen, I know that sounds stupid, but if you live in a tight-knit community, you get it. The group chat is the lifeline. It's where lost dogs get found, BBQs get planned, emergency plumber recommendations are shared, and I was kicked out without a word. A friend forwarded me screenshots. That's how I saw the post. Some anonymous user, G, I wonder who, wrote this on Nextdoor. Imagine being the one person who could potentially save a dying 10-year-old and saying no. That's who we're living next to. They didn't name me. They didn't have to. Within a day, people I barely knew were emailing me, DMing me on Facebook, leaving voicemails. Please reconsider. You were always so kind. This doesn't seem like you. I hope you never need help in your life. And here's the part that broke me. I started to believe them. For a few days, I spiraled hard. Maybe I was the villain. Maybe I should have just told Mark the truth. That I couldn't be a donor because I was already sick. That even getting tested could trigger something in my body that I might not recover from. But the thing is, when you've spent your life trying to hide your pain, trying to not be a burden, the idea of explaining it all just to justify not doing something feels like betrayal. Like you're bartering your trauma for permission to have boundaries. So I stayed quiet, ashamed, angry, hurt. I stopped walking my dog during daylight hours. I stopped opening the group Facebook page. I ate in silence, flinching at every knock on the door. And then, something changed. It happened 2 days later. I was sitting at my desk, checking Mark's utility bill account. Because yes, I was still handling his crap through all of this. When I got a text from a neighbor I hadn't heard from in weeks. Katie, you need to check the neighborhood group. Right now. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to look. But curiosity got the better of me. And right there, at the top of the thread, a massive post. Not by me. Not by Mark. By Tanya. A woman who lives 4 doors down. Super sweet. PDA mom. Makes killer lemon bars. Her husband once helped me fix a storm drain. The post began like this. I'm posting this because I think the truth matters, even when it's uncomfortable. She went on to explain that she had recently volunteered at a hospital fundraiser for the same program Ethan was enrolled in. And at that fundraiser, she'd spoken to a social worker who recognized Ethan's name. Not just Ethan, but Mark. According to the social worker, Mark was not even Ethan's legal guardian anymore. I read that line 3 times like my brain refused to absorb it. But there was more. Turns out, Child Protective Services had been involved. The details were limited, and Tanya was careful not to speculate. But the facts were, Mark had lost custody of Ethan months ago. Ethan was now in the care of a state-appointed guardian. The medical program had accepted Ethan under state supervision, not parental consent. And Mark? He wasn't with Ethan. He had never gone with him. He had been lying. All of it, the road trip, the relocation, the hospital visits, was a lie. He had left town, sure, but not for Ethan. No one knew where he actually was. Suddenly, all the red flags I'd ignored slammed together in my mind like a wreck. The foreclosure notices, the ghosting, the missing documents, the second phone, the way he quietly slipped out of sight once he'd handed me POA. And now, he'd manipulated an entire community into turning on me. Why? I didn't know yet, but I was done staying quiet. I posted a statement in the group that night. Nothing dramatic, just the truth. I explained I had accepted POA reluctantly, that I had tried to help, that I declined to be tested for deeply personal medical reasons I did not owe anyone. I said I'd stayed quiet out of respect, but that staying quiet had become dangerous. And I thanked Tanya for standing up. The comments exploded. People apologized. People DM'd me to ask if I was okay. People began to question everything Mark had told them. And within 48 hours, the same people who had shunned me were now digging into his past. What they found? Well, let's just say the real story behind Mark and Ethan was about to come out. And it was darker than any of us expected. By this point, my life had become something between a bad Lifetime movie and a social experiment gone wrong. If you followed the first 3 parts of this story, you know the basics. My neighbor Mark, single dad, sick son Ethan, asked me to take over power of attorney while he went out of town for a medical program. I agreed, thinking I was just helping someone in crisis. Then came the strange bills, the foreclosure notices, the silence. Then came Mark's ask. Would I consider getting tested as a bone marrow donor for Ethan? I said no, for personal, deeply private reasons. I live with an autoimmune condition I don't talk about. The idea of going through that kind of testing was not only painful, it could have been dangerous for me. But I didn't explain all that. I shouldn't have needed to. Still, Mark told someone. And that someone told everyone. And suddenly, my entire neighborhood turned against me. People called me a coward, a monster, a man who refused to help a dying child. Then, just when I started to believe maybe I was the villain, the truth began to unravel. It started with a neighbor uncovering that Mark didn't even have custody of Ethan anymore. That Ethan was under state guardianship. That Mark wasn't with him at all. But even that bombshell, that wasn't the end. Because a few days later, the biggest truth drop of all came from the last place I expected. An anonymous post on the neighborhood forum popped up one evening around 8:15 p.m. I was sitting in my living room, trying not to look at my phone, trying not to refresh the group thread, when I got a text from Katie again. Katie, holy sh**t. Did you see what just got posted? I opened the app. There it was, a post with no name, no profile photo, just the word anonymous and a caption that read, I work at the children's hospital, and you all deserve the truth. Started off simple, direct, clinical, even, just so you all know, no one on this street, including the person you're all bullying, was ever a match for Ethan. There was never a donor request made through official channels. His case was handled through state services, not parental volunteers. You're being emotionally manipulated. That was the post. No fluff, no hashtags, no angry rants, just cold, hard truth. And it hit like a nuke. The replies came instantly. Dozens of neighbors commented in real time. Questions, confusion, disbelief. Wait, what do you mean no request was made? Are you saying Mark lied about the bone marrow stuff? This can't be real, can it? But then came confirmation. One user, a parent of a child who had been at the same hospital, chimed in with this, I just called a friend who works in admin there. They confirmed it. There was no outreach for community donor matches. The kid is in foster care. Mark hasn't been involved for months. Then another comment. I called the number on the GoFundMe page. The hospital says they've never received any direct donations from that fund. Boom. In less than 30 minutes, every lie Mark had told started to implode. It was all fake. The part where I was supposedly a match? Made up. The part where I refused to help? Manufactured. Mark had fabricated that story. My supposed refusal to save Ethan's life. Just to guilt the neighborhood into doubling down on sympathy and donations. And the GoFundMe? Oh yeah, that became the next nuclear blast. It had raised tens of thousands of dollars. Multiple neighbors had posted screenshots showing their $500, $1,000, even $2,000 donations. People had organized bake sales, raffles, silent auctions. Where had the money gone? Not to the hospital. Not to Ethan. Someone had traced the linked bank account. It belonged to a private personal account under Mark's name. A fraud complaint was filed. Then another. Then a third. By the next morning, the GoFundMe had been frozen, pending investigation. The fallout? Imagine the most cheerful, suburban, potluck-loving neighborhood you can think of. Now imagine it collectively waking up and realizing it had been conned by the one guy everyone trusted the most. It was pandemonium. The same group chat that once called me selfish, now it was blowing up with apologies. I got a private message from Jeff, the same guy who ignored me for 2 weeks. I can't believe what we did to you. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve any of it. The woman who left the coward note in my mailbox? She showed up at my door with cookies and tears in her eyes. I didn't let her in, but I accepted the apology. Even the teenager who screamed, "Baby killer," at me left a handwritten note. I was being dumb. My mom told me the truth. I'm sorry. Should have felt good. Vindicating. But it didn't. Felt hollow. Because the damage had already been done. You know the saying, a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes? Yeah. That was my life now. For weeks, I'd been harassed, alienated, judged, all based on a lie told by someone who vanished the second things got complicated. I'd lost sleep, questioned my own character, wondered if I should have given up my medical privacy just to defend myself. And the whole time, Mark had been using me as a scapegoat, a villain, a distraction. So no, I wasn't celebrating, but I was angry because it wasn't just me, it was Ethan. Here's the part that hurts the most. All of this, the sympathy grifts, the lies, the manipulation, had been built on the back of a child's suffering. Ethan is sick. He does need care. He does need people around him who care about his health, his life, his future. And instead, his father used that suffering to prop up a con. I later found out Mark had been staying in a cheap rental town over, using fake names on DoorDash, siphoning donation money into prepaid accounts. When authorities finally caught up to him, he was brought in for questioning. I don't know the full charges yet. Fraud? Probably. Maybe child endangerment. Maybe identity theft, depending on how deep this goes. But here's what I do know. Mark is never coming back to this neighborhood. And no one, not even the people who once idolized him, wants him to. As for me, the power of attorney has been legally terminated. I've handed everything over to Ethan's state guardian and a family attorney assigned by the hospital. I'm no longer responsible for the bills, the house, or any of the mess Mark left behind. But I'm still picking up the pieces of my own life. Trust is a strange thing. It can take years to build and minutes to shatter. And even though my name is cleared, the wounds are still there. I walk the dog again now during daylight. I wave at neighbors when they wave first. The invitations to the next block party are already being sent out. Will I go? I don't know. But I do know one thing. When people show you who they really are, believe them. And when people turn on you without ever asking your side of the story, believe that too. It's strange the way people can flip. One day, they're ignoring you, whispering behind your back, calling you selfish, slipping cruel little notes into your mailbox. And the next, they're waving again, smiling, pretending nothing ever happened. After the anonymous nurse posted the truth about the bone marrow request, and after the GoFundMe fraud investigation went public, the entire neighborhood shifted like a flock of birds changing direction in the sky. People who hadn't looked me in the eye in weeks were now acting like old friends. One guy even brought over beer as an apology. A couple of the moms came by with banana bread and awkward explanations, the kind that begin with, "We didn't know," and end with, "You have to understand, it was about a child." I smiled. I nodded. I told them I appreciated the gesture, but I didn't forget. I remembered every face that turned away, every message that questioned my character, every stone cast without even asking for my side of the story. And I especially remembered the man who started it all. Mark. He vanished overnight. Literally. One day, I noticed the blinds in his house were shut. The next morning, the driveway was empty. The curtains were gone. Front porch light off. Mailbox cleared. I peeked through the window. Completely empty. No note. No message. No goodbye. Just gone. At first, I thought he was arrested. Maybe the fraud charges had finally caught up to him. But then I got a message from someone who had worked with him years ago. Someone who had seen my story floating around online and recognized his face. What they told me, that was the final twist I never saw coming. Mark, or rather, the man we all knew as Mark, wasn't even Ethan's real father. That part took a moment to settle in. Everything had been based on the assumption that this man was a single dad doing his best for a sick kid. But he wasn't. He had posed as a caregiver, used temporary guardianship paperwork to gain access to Ethan's benefits, positioned himself as a loving father figure, all to exploit sympathy and rake in donations. That's why the custody had been revoked months ago. That's why he didn't go with Ethan to the medical program. That's why he needed me to hold power of attorney. He was already setting up his escape plan. And all the while, he was spinning this web of lies so tight that when I said one word, "No," the entire neighborhood turned against me without question, because he had conditioned them to see him as the hero, and me as the selfish side character who didn't play along. But here's the one good thing that came out of it all. Ethan is real. He's not a fake name. Not some made-up child used to scam people. He's an actual kid. And he's okay. After child services got involved, they located extended family, actual relatives who had been trying to find him. He's now in their care. From what I've been told, he's safe, going to school, and receiving real medical attention through legitimate programs. Not back-alley fundraising schemes run by a con artist. He has a real home. He has real support. And hopefully he has peace. As for me, I've started walking my dog in the mornings again. People wave now. Some stop to chat. A few still walk on eggshells around me, unsure how to undo what they said or didn't say. That's fine. I'm not bitter. I just see things more clearly now. I didn't post this story for sympathy. I didn't write it so people would flood the comments saying, "You're such a good person," or "I would have done the same thing." Because let's be honest, most people wouldn't have. Most people would have done what the neighborhood did. Hear one side, assume the worst, and join the pylon. Mob mentality doesn't need a villain, it just needs a story. And if that story is about a dying kid, people will believe whatever makes them feel like the hero for 5 seconds. But the truth is not always wrapped in a headline. It's quiet, complicated, and sometimes it's the one thing no one wants to hear. So if there's anything you take from this story, let it be this. Don't be so quick to pick up a pitchfork just because everyone else is swinging theirs. Ask questions. Wait for the facts. And if someone says no, maybe trust that they have a reason, even if they don't owe you one. Because the next time the mob comes for someone, it might be you. So, AITA for refusing to donate bone marrow? Or was I just the scapegoat for a massive con? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more crazy Reddit stories. AITA for exposing her affair at our baby's gender reveal party? Hi Reddit. I'm not sure how to even begin writing this. My hands are shaking a little, just hovering over the keyboard. Because once I type this all out, it'll feel real. It'll feel permanent. And maybe that's what I need. Maybe I need it to stop living in my head and instead live here. Out in the open, raw, ugly, painful, and real. So here goes. I'm a 31-year-old guy. I've been married to my wife, Emily, not her real name, but for the sake of the story, for just over 3 years. But we've been together for 6. We met at a work conference. One of those boring, beige-carpeted networking events where the coffee tastes like disappointment and everyone's wearing fake smiles. I remember seeing her standing at a snack table, trying to pry the lid off a too fancy water bottle. And she looked up at me and smiled. Not one of those forced professional smiles. No, this one reached her eyes. It was the kind of smile you only give to someone you already feel safe with. And yet, we hadn't even spoken a word. I offered her my bottle opener, and she made a joke about not being able to survive in the wild. We talked for maybe 20 minutes before getting pulled back into the monotony of the event, but I couldn't stop thinking about her after that. 2 weeks later, we were going out for drinks. 2 months after that, we were exclusive. And somewhere in the middle of those years, I really, truly believed I had found the person I'd grow old with. You know, the kind of love story they write novels about? The kind that's messy but passionate, wild but safe? That's what we had. Or what I thought we had. Looking back, I don't know if I was delusional, naive, or just hopelessly in love. Maybe all three. Because now, everything I thought I knew has shattered. And it all started unraveling about 2 months ago. Let me walk you through it. Emily and I had been talking about starting a family for a while. Not seriously at first, more like casual daydreams. You know, the "if we had a daughter, I bet she'd have your nose" kind of talk. But then last year, we made the decision. I remember the night we sat on our balcony, a half-empty bottle of wine between us, the city lights painting her skin in gold and lavender. She looked at me and said, "I think I'm ready." So we tried. For months. The anticipation, the negative tests, the tears, the late-night pep talks. It all became part of our rhythm. And then, one morning in late June, she walked into the kitchen holding a white stick, her hands trembling. 2 pink lines. I dropped my coffee mug. Literally. It shattered across the tile floor and neither of us cared. We were laughing, crying, hugging. We were going to be parents. God, I wish I could hold on to just that version of the memory. The joy, the hope, before everything went black. Emily's parents were ecstatic when we told them. They immediately offered to host the gender reveal party. Her mom went full Pinterest mode, color-coded balloons, customized cookies, confetti cannons. We scheduled it for the second weekend of July at their place. It was going to be beautiful, and for a while things felt perfect, almost too perfect. That's when I started noticing the cracks. First, it was little things. Emily started coming home a bit later than usual. She'd brush it off with excuses that sounded believable. Meetings ran long, traffic was bad. She stopped for groceries. Nothing crazy, but there was this subtle shift in her energy. She was distant. Then came the phone stuff. She'd always been casual with her phone. Left it on the couch. Let me use it to change the music or check the weather. But suddenly, she was guarding it like it held nuclear codes. Always face down. Notifications silenced. One time I asked to use it to Google something, and she actually flinched, like physically recoiled, then quickly said, "I'll do it." That was new. And then there were the passwords. She changed the lock screen code, changed her laptop password. When I asked why, she gave a weak excuse about just updating things. My gut started whispering things I didn't want to hear, but I wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. The breaking point came one Thursday night. I came home late from work. Emily was already asleep on the couch, curled up in one of my old hoodies. The TV still on. Her phone was on the coffee table, unlocked. I don't know what possessed me to do it. I'm not a snoop. I've never gone through her stuff. But something about that moment felt heavy, like the air itself was telling me, look. So I did. I picked it up and tapped on her messages. There was a conversation pinned at the top. A name I didn't recognize, Liam. My chest tightened. I clicked. The messages weren't just flirty. They weren't just crossing a line. They were explicit. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. My heart was thudding in my ears. I felt like I was outside of my body. Like this wasn't happening to me. This was someone else's nightmare. She said things to this guy. Things I didn't even know she thought. She described what they did. How he made her feel. How she never felt this alive until she met him. She told him she wished she'd met him first. That she dreamed about running away with him. That she wasn't sure if the baby was mine. I dropped the phone. Literally. It thudded against the carpet like a gunshot. And then I just sat there, staring at her. My wife. The woman I planned to grow old with. The mother of my unborn child. Sleeping peacefully, like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't just obliterated our marriage behind my back. I didn't wake her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even move for a solid hour. I just sat there, my mind spinning in 1,000 directions, replaying every moment, every kiss, every laugh we ever shared, now twisted by the knowledge that it was all a lie, or at least tainted. What hurt the most wasn't even the sex. It was the words, the intimacy, the way she described feeling free with him, like I was some ball and chain holding her back, like our life was just a prison she needed to escape. I thought about the baby. My heart clenched. Was it mine? Could I even ask that? Would I want to know the truth if it wasn't? It was like I had been shoved into an alternate timeline, a version of reality where everything looked the same on the outside. The house, the photos, the baby bump, but nothing was real underneath. It was all rotten. I barely slept that night. I didn't confront her immediately. Part of me wanted to. God. I wanted to scream and cry and throw her phone against the wall and demand answers. But another part of me, I don't know, needed time. Time to breathe, to think, to figure out what came next. I started gathering evidence. Screenshots, dates. I even found a shared Google Calendar entry labeled lunchtime meetings, which matched several of the messages she had sent to Liam about sneaking out to his car during work hours. I was spiraling. Every "I'm working late" excuse replayed in my head like a horror reel. I even started questioning our wedding day. Was she thinking about someone else while saying, "I do"? Had this been going on longer than I realized? But here's where things get really messed up. Even after all of that, after the betrayal, the doubt, the sheer devastation, I still looked at her and felt love, twisted, broken, but it was there. This was the woman I had built a life with, the woman carrying what might be my child. How do you just turn that off? You don't. And so I did something insane. I kept pretending. We went ahead with the gender reveal party. Yes, you read that right. 3 weeks after discovering her affair, I stood beside her at her parents' house, holding a confetti cannon and smiling for pictures while everyone clapped and cheered. I held her hand. I rubbed her belly. I played the perfect husband. And all the while I was dying inside, because I knew, but she didn't know I knew. Yet, if you haven't read part 1, go back and read that first, because nothing I'm about to say will make any sense unless you've heard how my world was ripped out from under me. Quick recap. I, 31M, had been married to my wife Emily, 29F, for 3 years, together for 6. We had what I thought was a beautiful marriage, full of trust, love, late-night talks, belly laughs, inside jokes, and all the little moments that convince you've found your person. Then she got pregnant. We were ecstatic. And then I found out she was cheating. Not had a flirty conversation at work, kind of cheating. I'm talking full-blown, soul-splitting, emotionally intimate and physically graphic affair with a coworker named Liam. I found the texts. I read every word, and I couldn't unknow what I knew. But instead of storming out, screaming at her, or throwing her stuff out onto the front lawn like you see in the movies, I did something different. I got strategic. People think that when you find out your partner cheated, there's only one valid response. Rage, fury, chaos. But sometimes silence is scarier. Stillness is deadlier. Because when you're quiet, they don't know what's coming. The day after I found the messages, I started building my case like a damn lawyer. Every time she texted him, I took a screenshot. Every voice memo, photo, emoji, calendar event, saved and backed up to a hidden drive. I got a digital record of her work schedule and Liam's. Surprise, surprise, every single late night at the office lined up with his. Like clockwork. She wasn't even being smart about it. There were receipts everywhere. Hotel bookings on a shared credit card she thought I never checked. Ride-share pickups from locations near his apartment. Venmo charges for coffee at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. It was all there. She was cheating, and she was careless. But I wasn't. The party was supposed to be a joyful celebration. Her parents were pulling out all the stops, rented outdoor tents, a custom balloon arch, blue and pink everything. Emily was in full nesting mode, buzzing around our kitchen like a 1950s housewife high on sugar and baby hormones. She was decorating cupcakes when I walked in. She was humming, and for a second, just a split second, I saw the version of her I fell in love with. The carefree girl who couldn't open a water bottle at a conference and made a joke about not surviving the apocalypse. She looked over her shoulder at me and smiled. "You excited for tomorrow?" she asked, piping little swirls of frosting like it was the most important thing in the world. I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, "More than you know," because in that moment, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to stay quiet, but I wasn't going to yell either. I was going to put on a show. That evening, I made 3 phone calls. First was to her sister, Alyssa. She's younger than Emily by about 3 years, fiercely loyal, and sharper than a tack. We've always gotten along, though she's always been closer with Emily than with me. I told her I had something important planned after the gender reveal, and I needed her help filming it. "Filming what?" she asked. "You'll see," I said. "Just make sure your phone's charged." She didn't ask many questions, but I could hear the tension in her voice. She knew something was off. Next was my brother, Dan. He's the kind of guy who can't keep a secret to save his life, but when I told him I needed this to be airtight, he got serious. "Are you telling me you're about to drop a bomb at your own kid's gender reveal?" he asked. "I'm telling you the bomb's already been dropped. I'm just making sure everyone sees the crater." His laugh was low. "All right, I'm in." The last person I called was Emily's best friend, Paige. That one was tricky. See, Paige and I were never exactly close. She was always one of those ride-or-die besties who would blindly defend Emily no matter what. But this time, I needed her. She would be standing right next to Emily at the party. I needed her reaction. I needed authenticity. So I told her half the truth. I said I had discovered something important and needed to confront Emily about it publicly. I said it would all make sense soon, and that I just wanted her to be ready, phone in hand, for a special surprise after the reveal. She hesitated, but she agreed, and with that, the stage was set. It was a beautiful day, too beautiful almost, like the universe had no idea what was about to happen. The backyard was a pastel dream, streamers everywhere, balloons tied to every chair, tables loaded with pink lemonade, iced tea, cucumber sandwiches, cake pops, and mini quiches. A DJ in the corner played cheerful acoustic covers of pop songs. Emily was glowing. Literally, that second trimester glow was hitting hard. She wore a white lace maternity dress with a pink and blue sash that said, "Mommy to be." Her hair was curled, her cheeks flushed, and she looked genuinely, blissfully happy. Sickeningly happy. People started arriving, cousins, co-workers, high school friends. I floated through the crowd like a ghost, hugging people, shaking hands, smiling politely, all while feeling like I was about to detonate. But I kept it cool, because the best lies are the ones that look like love. Around 3 p.m., we gathered everyone near the big white banner that said, "He or she, what will baby be?" Emily and I stood in front of a giant black balloon filled with colored confetti. Everyone had their phones out, cheering, smiling. "All right," the DJ called out. On the count of three, we popped the balloon. Pink confetti exploded everywhere. People screamed. Applause. Cheers. Someone behind us shouted, "It's a girl!" Emily was crying. I wrapped my arms around her, kissed her temple, smiled for the camera. It was perfect. Picture perfect. And then, it wasn't. I stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Emily and I are thrilled to welcome a baby girl into our lives. We're so grateful to have all of you here to celebrate this moment with us." People clapped again. Cameras flashed. "But before we continue, I actually have one more surprise," I said, raising a small envelope in my hand. "Something I've been working on for the past few weeks." Emily tilted her head, confused. "What is it?" she asked, still smiling, still wiping away tears. It's kind of a tribute, a little project, a highlight reel of sorts." I nodded to my brother, who connected his phone to the Bluetooth speaker. "Dan, play the video." And just like that, the party died. The screen of the mounted TV lit up. The title card appeared. "Loyalty, a retrospective." Soft piano music played underneath. At first, it looked like a slideshow of Emily and me. Photos from our dating years, our wedding, vacations, the pregnancy announcement. And then the tone shifted. The music stopped. And the next image was a screenshot. A text message from Liam. "God, you feel so much better than him. I wish we didn't have to sneak around." Another screenshot. "Emily, I hate going home to him after you. Feels so fake." The crowd was dead silent. Another one. "I think there's a chance the baby is yours. I haven't told him yet." Gasped. Murmurs. A few people stepped back. Emily was frozen, mouth slightly open, eyes darting to me, then the screen, then the crowd. What is this?" she whispered. I didn't answer. The video kept going, timestamp messages, location data, photos of her entering Liam's apartment, copies of hotel receipts. It was a digital dissection of her betrayal. I watched her break in real time. Tears streamed down her face. Her sister dropped her phone. Paige was shaking. My brother just stared at the screen, jaw clenched. And then, finally, the screen faded to black. One final message appeared. "Loyalty isn't what you say. It's what you do." And with that, I turned off the mic. No words, no screams, just silence. People didn't know what to do. Some left immediately. Others stood frozen in place, trying to process what they'd just seen. Emily was sobbing now, full body heaves, mascara running down her face like ink. She stumbled toward me. Please, please, I can explain. I shook my head. Don't. You already did. I read everything. I didn't mean for it to happen, she cried, clutching my arm. I didn't know how to stop. Pulled away. You made your choice. I'm just making mine. And I walked, right out of that perfect pastel party. Out of the house. Out of the marriage. The backyard was still echoing with celebration. People clapped. Some cheered. Emily's mom had tears in her eyes. Her sister was bouncing on her heels, filming everything. Emily turned to me, eyes shining, and kissed my cheek. This is the happiest day of my life, she said. And I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman, this liar, this master of deception who had not only betrayed me but made me doubt the most sacred experience of our lives, the creation of a family. I smiled, then gently took the mic from the DJ stand. I looked around the crowd. Every face turned to me, expecting a sweet speech, a thank you, maybe even a marriage proposal level emotional moment. Instead, I said, first of all, thank you all for coming. Emily and I are expecting a beautiful baby girl. There was a pause, a warm little chuckle from the crowd. But before we welcome her into the world, I want to make sure we build this family on honesty and trust. My voice didn't shake, but Emily did. I felt her body stiffen beside me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her glance up at me. And in that one instant, she knew. She knew. I continued, unfortunately, that's not what I've had these past few months. What I've had is betrayal. The laughter stopped. The clapping halted. All I could hear now was the creak of a chair and the sound of my own heartbeat. I turned slightly to face her. Emily has been having an affair with a coworker named Liam. I've known for 3 weeks. I have the messages, the photos, the receipts. And I didn't say anything because I wanted you all to see what betrayal looks like behind a smile. Gasps rippled through the backyard like a wave crashing on concrete. A few people dropped their drinks. One guy literally said, "No F *** N way." Asterisk. Emily stood frozen. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I could feel her world tilting beneath her feet. She reached for the mic, maybe to stop me, maybe to deny it. I don't know. But I stepped back before she could say a word. I pulled a small flash drive from my pocket. This, I said, holding it up, has everything. Screenshots, dates, messages, conversations, all of it. Check the timestamps. And I handed it to her father. The look on his face. It was like someone had just told him the sky wasn't real. That's when it all fell apart. Emily let out this horrible choking sound. Not crying exactly, more like gasping. Like her brain couldn't catch up with what was happening. She turned to me, eyes wild. "You're doing this here? In front of everyone?" And I said, flatly, "You did it first. I'm just giving it subtitles." Her mom rushed over, arms out, trying to wrap Emily in a hug, but Emily pushed her off. Her best friend Paige looked like she'd been shot. She kept looking between me and Emily, visibly horrified, one hand covering her mouth. Her sister, Alyssa, still filming. In fact, a bunch of people were. Phones were everywhere. Some guests had already started walking toward the gate. Awkward, fast-walking, I don't want to be involved exits. Others stood frozen in place like they were watching a slow-motion car crash. I turned back to Emily one last time, and I said, "I would have forgiven almost anything. I could have forgiven you needing space. I could have forgiven you having doubts. But I can't forgive this. Not when you made me look like a fool. Not when you played me while you were carrying what might not even be my daughter." And that was the final nail. She screamed. Not words, just a broken, raw sound that sounded like pain and guilt and rage all tangled together. She dropped to her knees, sobbing. And I walked. I walked away from the applause, the balloons, the cake, the perfectly staged decorations. I walked away from the lie. I stayed at my brother's place that night. I turned off my phone, turned off everything. I didn't want to know what people were saying. I didn't care who was defending who. I didn't want to hear Emily's apologies or her justifications or whatever speech she had prepared in her head. I wanted silence. I wanted to breathe. The next morning, I turned on my phone. 40 missed calls, dozens of texts, most from Emily, a few from her mom, a handful from mutual friends asking if I was okay. Paige sent me a long message apologizing, saying she had no idea and that she felt physically sick for having supported her all that time. Alyssa, her sister, sent me one line, "She deserves everything that's coming." 2 days later, Emily showed up at my brother's place. She was a mess. No makeup. Hoodie. I swollen from crying. She looked nothing like the woman who had stood next to me at that party. She begged me to talk. Said she'd do anything. Said she was scared. Said the baby was mine. She was sure of it. But she was willing to do a paternity test if that's what I needed. I told her to sit. I didn't yell. I just asked one question. Why? She cried harder. I don't know, she said. It started when we were struggling to get pregnant. I felt alone. I felt ugly. Liam paid attention to me and I was stupid. And once it started, I didn't know how to stop. She said she never meant for it to get serious. She said she never stopped loving me. She said it was just physical. But I reminded her it wasn't. I saw the texts. I saw the emotional intimacy. The declarations of, "I feel more alive with you," and "he doesn't understand me." She didn't cheat once. She built an entire secret life. And she wanted forgiveness? I told her I'd think about the paternity test. But as for us, there was no us. Not anymore. I can't unsee what I saw. I can't unfeel the way it felt to stand beside her while she smiled and kissed me like everything was fine, knowing damn well what she'd done. So I filed for divorce. We're figuring out custody. And I told her, I'll be there for our daughter, but not for her. It's been a few weeks. I'm living in a new apartment. It's small, but it's quiet. I have a bassinet by the window. I read baby books at night. I talk to her through Emily's belly on weekends. I sing songs I haven't sung since I was a kid. I'm trying. It's messy, and it hurts, but I'm free. And when my daughter asks one day why her parents didn't stay together, I'll tell her the truth. That I loved her mother deeply. That I tried. But some things you just can't come back from. And that no matter what, she was the only because I'll tell you something, I would rather be the villain in someone's lie than the fool in someone's fairy tale. And if that makes me vindictive, fine. But I didn't expose her to hurt her. I exposed her to protect myself. To protect my daughter from growing up thinking love means betrayal wrapped in pink streamers and cake frosting. I did it so I could sleep at night knowing I didn't stay silent. I did it because I finally realized that the only thing worse than losing someone is losing yourself trying to keep them. It was exactly 7 days after the party. I went back to the house, the one we used to share, to start packing up the last of my things. Most of it was baby stuff. A crib we picked out together. Onesies, little pink booties, books I'd already started reading aloud, thinking maybe my daughter would recognize my voice when she entered the world. I sat there on the nursery floor, surrounded by the wreckage of a future I thought was real. I don't even know how long I was sitting like that, just staring at a baby blanket with little ducks on it, when the thought hit me. Not a whisper, not a question, a scream in my chest. What if the baby isn't mine? I had asked it before in the beginning, when I first found the messages between her and Liam. But when we did the initial paternity test, it came back that I was the father. I believed it. But now, after the party, after the lies, after seeing how deep the rabbit hole really went, something didn't sit right. So I made a call. I spoke with my lawyer and explained everything. That I needed absolute certainty. That I couldn't move forward, emotionally, legally, or spiritually, without knowing the truth. Not a half-truth. Not a probably. Not a she swears on her life. The truth. We arranged a non-invasive prenatal paternity test through a private lab. It wasn't cheap, but peace of mind rarely is. They took a blood sample from Emily and a DNA sample from me. She agreed reluctantly, but she agreed. Maybe part of her still believed she could salvage something between us. Maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't. I don't know. All I know is what came in that envelope 2 weeks later. 0% probability of paternity. That's what it said. No room for debate. No margin for error. The baby, the one I had talked to through a wall of skin and amniotic fluid, the one I had dreamed about for months, was not mine. Not biologically. Not legally. Not anything. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even move for a full 5 minutes. Felt like the floor dropped out from under me and I just kept falling. But there was no bottom. Just air. Just nothing. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was numb. Not because I didn't care, but because I had cared so much. Too much. I filed the next day. No more delays. No more, maybe we can work something out. No more texts from Emily begging me to talk. It was over. Officially. We're done. My lawyer filed paperwork that would ensure I had no legal ties to the child. No custody, no financial obligations, nothing. Felt cruel. Cold. But it was necessary. I had to let go of a life that was never mine to begin with. I live in a small apartment now. It's quiet. Sometimes too quiet. The walls are white. The fridge is mostly empty. My mornings are silent except for the sound of my own breathing. But it's mine. No lies here. No flipped over phones or fake meetings or gaslighting glances. Just truth. And therapy. And distance. Therapy has helped more than I expected. Not because it fixes the pain, but because it honors it. Gives it a place to sit. A name. A shape. It reminds me that I'm not crazy. That being betrayed doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. I've started jogging again. Cooking for one. Reading books I never had time for. Relearning what it means to be alone. And okay with it. But still, there are nights. It's always around 2 a.m. when the doubt creeps in. When the silence of the apartment feels louder than any fight we ever had. When I scroll Reddit like I'm doing right now, rereading my own story, asking myself questions I can't answer. Aita, did I go too far? Was it too public? Too brutal? Did I ruin something sacred? Or did I just refuse to let a lie fester in silence? Because here's the thing, I didn't do it for revenge. I didn't do it to hurt her. I did it because I had to. Because sometimes the only way to cut out the rot is to expose it to the air. Let it burn in the sunlight until there's nothing left but the truth. So no, I don't regret what I did. Not the video, not the speech, not the truth. Because standing up for yourself, even when it costs you everything, isn't cruelty. It's survival. To anyone listening or watching who's been through betrayal, you are not weak. You are not worthless. You are not what they made you feel like. You deserve honesty. You deserve love without conditions. And if standing up for yourself means burning down the fantasy of a perfect life, then let it burn. Because what rises from the ashes might just be the real you. The one who knows better. The one who demands better. The one who no longer settles for almosts and half-truths and pastel-colored lies. So if you've been in my shoes, or are in them now, you're not alone. I see you. We all do.